Hello there, you're listening to the planet's memory, where time breathes and the Earth remembers. Close your eyes and imagine standing at the edge of time itself, where the answers to humanity's deepest questions lie buried beneath millions of years of stone and silence. Before the first human ever drew breath, before the first fire ever sparked hope into the darkness, before civilization ever laid its first stone upon another, there existed masters of this world who ruled with a dominion so complete, so absolute, that their reign stretched across continents and oceans for a period longer than our minds can truly comprehend. They were not kings or emperors in the human sense, but living giants who commanded the earth with tooth and claw, who shaped entire ecosystems with their presence, and who seemed so perfectly adapted to their world that their extinction appears almost impossible to believe. Yet they vanished, erased from existence by forces so powerful and so sudden that nearly every single one of them disappeared from the face of the earth in what scientists now call the most catastrophic event in the history of complex life. This is the story of the dinosaurs, the undisputed masters of our planet for over 160 million years, and the great forgetting that swallowed them whole, leaving behind only whispers in stone and shadows in our collective imagination. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let us journey together through deep time, through epochs when the world was unrecognizable, when creatures of unimaginable size and power walked where cities now stand, and when the very air itself was thick with the sounds of life that we will never hear again. This is not just a story about extinction, but about the fragility of dominance, the temporary nature of power, and the humbling truth that even the mightiest rulers of Earth can be erased in a moment of cosmic violence. The story of the dinosaurs cannot begin with their arrival, for they emerged from a world that had already witnessed death on a scale almost beyond comprehension. Long before the first dinosaur ever walked upon the Earth, our planet was home to different masters, different rulers, who held dominion over land and sea in an age so distant that it feels like another universe entirely. The Earth itself was younger then, still finding its rhythm, still shaping its identity through violent transformation and catastrophic change, about 300 million years ago, during a period scientists call the Carboniferous. The world was a place of dense forests and enormous insects, where dragonflies the size of seagulls buzzed through humid air, and millipedes as long as cars crawled across the forest floor. The land was covered with vast swamps filled with primitive plants that would eventually become the coal deposits humans would mine millions of years later. And the oxygen levels in the atmosphere were so high that it allowed creatures to grow to sizes that seem monstrous to our modern eyes, that this ancient world was not stable, and the Earth has never been a planet that allows any single group of creatures to rule forever without challenge or change. As time moved forward through the deep corridors of prehistory, the planet entered a new phase of existence during the Permian period, roughly 290 million years ago. This was an era when life on land truly began to flourish in forms that were starting to resemble the backboned animals we know today. The Permian world was dominated not by dinosaurs, but by creatures called synapsids, distant relatives of modern mammals who came in an astonishing variety of shapes and sizes. Some were small and scurrying, others were massive predators with enormous sail-like structures on their backs, and still others were plant-eaters who roamed in herds across the supercontinents that existed before the land masses we recognize today had even formed. The most famous of these Permian creatures was Dimetron, often mistaken for a dinosaur in popular imagination, but actually a distant ancestor of mammals, a fierce predator whose distinctive sail may have helped it regulate its body temperature in a world where warm-blooded metabolism was still being invented by evolution. These synapsids were successful, diverse, and seemed perfectly adapted to the world in which they lived. And if you could have asked any observer at that time who the permanent masters of Earth would be, the answer would have seemed obvious. The permanent is an illusion in the story of life on Earth, and approximately 252 million years ago, something went terribly, catastrophically wrong. The exact causes are still debated by scientists, but the results are absolutely clear and utterly devastating. The Earth experienced what is known as the Permian-Triassic extinction event, often called simply the Great Dying, and it remains to this day the most severe extinction event in the entire history of our planet. Volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia released unimaginable quantities of lava and poisonous gases into the atmosphere over the course of thousands or perhaps millions of years, fundamentally altering the climate and chemistry of the entire world. The oceans became acidic and depleted of oxygen. The temperatures soared to levels that made much of the land uninhabitable, and a cascade of environmental disasters fed upon themselves in a feedback loop of destruction that life simply could not escape. By the time this period of horror finally ended, approximately 96% of all marine species and 70% of all terrestrial vertebrate species had been completely obliterated from existence. The synapsids who had dominated the land were decimated, their diversity and their dominance shattered forever, and the world that emerged from this catastrophe was an almost empty stage waiting for new actors to step into the spotlight. The early Triassic period that followed was a time of recovery, but recovery from such devastation is neither quick nor simple. The Earth was a hot, harsh place with a climate that swung between extremes, and the surviving creatures struggled to adapt to a world that had been fundamentally transformed. The oceans were nearly empty, the forests were gone, and the complexity of ecosystems that had taken millions of years to develop had been reduced to its most basic and primitive forms. But life, as it always does, found a way forward, and in the empty spaces left by the fallen masters, new opportunities arose for creatures who had previously lived in the shadows. Among these survivors were small reptiles, not particularly impressive or dominant at first, but carrying within their lineage the potential for something remarkable. These were the archosaurs, the ruling reptiles, and they would split into two great branches that would shape the next era of life on Earth. One branch would eventually lead to the crocodiles we know today, fearsome predators who have remained relatively unchanged for millions of years because they found a design that works perfectly for their environment. The other branch, however, would take a different path entirely, and from this lineage would emerge the dinosaurs, the group of creatures destined to become the most successful and dominant land animals the world has ever known. The actual origin of the dinosaurs is a story wrapped in mystery and speculation, because the fossil record from the early and middle Triassic period is frustratingly incomplete. We do not have a perfect sequence of creatures showing the gradual transformation from ordinary archosaurs, and paleontologists must work like detectives piecing together clues from scattered and fragmentary evidence. What we do know is that somewhere around 230 million years ago, in the southern regions of the supercontinent Pangaea, a new type of reptile began to appear in the fossil record. These creatures were not yet the giants that would later dominate the Earth, but they possessed distinctive features that set them apart from their relatives and pointed toward the incredible diversity they would eventually achieve. The earliest dinosaurs were relatively small, perhaps the size of modern dogs or turkeys, and they walked on two legs with a posture that was distinctly upright compared to the sprawling gait of other reptiles. Their hips were structured in a unique way that allowed their legs to be positioned directly underneath their bodies rather than splayed out to the sides, and this seemingly simple anatomical change had profound implications for their ability to move efficiently and quickly across the landscape. One of the earliest known dinosaurs was a creature called Eoraptor, discovered in Argentina in rocks that date back approximately 230 to 1 million years. Eoraptor was a small, agile predator about the size of a fox, with sharp teeth and grasping hands that could seize prey, and its skeleton shows the fundamental characteristics that define all dinosaurs. Another early dinosaur was Herrerasaurus, also from Argentina, a larger and more robust predator that grew to about 10 feet in length and was clearly a formidable hunter in its environment. These early dinosaurs were not dominant creatures in their ecosystems, but rather modest members of a community that included many other types of reptiles, some of which were actually larger and more successful at that time. The Triassic world was still largely ruled by different groups of archosaurs, particularly the Crutaceans, who were the ancestors of modern crocodiles, and these creatures occupied most of the top predator roles and many of the herbivore niches as well. The dinosaurs were present, they were surviving, but they were not yet the masters of anything, and it would have been impossible to predict that they would eventually inherit the entire Earth. What gave the dinosaurs their competitive edge has been the subject of considerable scientific debate, and the truth likely involves a combination of factors rather than any single advantage. Their upright posture and efficient bipedal locomotion allowed them to move with less energy expenditure than creatures with sprawling gaits, which meant they could travel farther, hunt more effectively, and escape danger more readily. Many early dinosaurs also showed signs of being relatively active animals with higher metabolic rates than typical reptiles, which would have given them advantages in stamina and sustained activity levels. Their hands were capable of grasping and manipulating objects in ways that other reptiles could not, and this dexterity would prove valuable both for predators capturing prey and for herbivores gathering food. Additionally, some scientists believe that dinosaurs may have had more sophisticated respiratory systems than other reptiles, with air sacs similar to those found in modern birds, that allowed for more efficient oxygen extraction and better performance during physical exertion. None of these advantages alone would have guaranteed success, but together they created a package of adaptations that made dinosaurs increasingly competitive in the ecosystems where they lived. The world of the Middle and Late Triassic period was a strange and dangerous place, filled with creatures that have no modern equivalents and that challenge our imagination with their bizarre forms and unfamiliar lifestyles. There were enormous herbivorous dicynodonts, remnants of the synapsid lineage that had survived the Great Dying, lumbering through the landscape on four pillar-like legs and using their beaked mouths to crop vegetation. There were Rausuchians, massive crocodile-like predators that walked on semi-upright legs and were the apex predators of their time, some reaching lengths of over 20 feet and possessing jaws powerful enough to crush bone. There were phytosaurs that looked remarkably like modern crocodiles and lived in similar aquatic environments, waiting at the water's edge to ambush animals that came to drink. And there were many other strange creatures, from armored atosaurs that resembled armadillos scaled up to the size of cows, to flying pterosaurs that had already mastered the air long before birds would evolve. In this crowded and competitive world, the early dinosaurs were just one group among many, and their eventual dominance was not inevitable or obvious. Yet fate, in the form of environmental catastrophe, would once again intervene to reshape the hierarchy of life on Earth. Approximately 201 million years ago, at the boundary between the Triassic and Jurassic periods, another mass extinction event struck the planet. This extinction was not as severe as the Great Dying that had ended the Permian, but it was still devastating enough to eliminate roughly 76% of all terrestrial and marine species. The causes of this extinction are still being investigated, but evidence points to massive volcanic eruptions associated with the breakup of Pangaea, specifically the eruptions that formed the Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, one of the largest volcanic events in Earth's history. These eruptions would have released enormous quantities of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere, causing rapid climate change, ocean acidification, and global warming that disrupted ecosystems worldwide. The creatures that had dominated the Triassic world, particularly the large Crutacean archosaurs who had been the primary competitors of the dinosaurs, were hit especially hard by this extinction event. Many of the top predators disappeared completely, and the large herbivores that had filled the landscape were decimated. But the dinosaurs, for reasons that scientists are still working to fully understand, survived this crisis in relatively better condition than their competitors. When the smoke cleared from the Triassic-Jurassic extinction event and the Earth began its recovery, the dinosaurs found themselves in a world transformed and filled with opportunity. The competitors who had kept them in check were gone or greatly reduced, and the ecological niches that had been occupied by other creatures were suddenly vacant and available. Evolution does not pause or hesitate, and the dinosaurs responded to this opportunity with an explosive radiation of diversity that would establish them as the dominant terrestrial vertebrates for the remainder of the Mesozoic era. The early Jurassic period, beginning approximately 200 million years ago, marked the true beginning of the age of dinosaurs, and the changes that occurred during this time were both rapid and profound. Dinosaurs began to diversify into numerous different lineages, each adapting to different lifestyles and ecological roles. And the small, modest creatures of the Triassic period gave rise to descendants that ranged from chicken-sized hunters to animals that would eventually become the largest land animals ever to walk the Earth. One of the most significant developments during the Jurassic period was the emergence and evolution of the sauropods, the long-necked giants that remain the most iconic and awe-inspiring of all dinosaurs. The first sauropods appeared in the early Jurassic, descended from smaller bipedal ancestors who had gradually shifted toward a four-legged stance and begun to develop elongated necks that allowed them to reach vegetation that other herbivores could not access. Early sauropods like Volcanodon and Baroposaurus were already impressive animals, measuring 30 to 50 feet in length, but they were merely the beginning of a trend toward gigantism that would produce creatures of truly staggering proportions. As the Jurassic period progressed, sauropods continued to evolve larger and larger body sizes, driven by a combination of factors that made gigantism advantageous. Their long necks allowed them to feed efficiently without moving their massive bodies constantly, essentially functioning as mobile cranes that could strip vegetation from a wide area while standing in one place. Their large size provided protection from predators, as even the most formidable carnivores would think twice before attacking an adult sauropod that could weigh as much as several elephants. And their efficient digestive systems, which may have utilized gastroliths or stomach stones to help grind plant material, allowed them to extract maximum nutrition from the tough vegetation that dominated Jurassic landscapes. By the middle and late Jurassic period, roughly 160 million years ago, sauropods had achieved sizes that seem almost impossible to believe. Diplodocus, one of the most well-known sauropods, reached lengths of up to 90 feet from its tiny head to the tip of its whip-like tail, though much of this length was neck and tail rather than body. Brachiosaurus was built differently, with front legs longer than its hind legs and a neck that stretched upward rather than extending horizontally, allowing it to browse on treetops like a 40-foot-tall giraffe, scaled up to weigh as much as 50 tons. Apatosaurus, previously known by the incorrect name Brontosaurus, was a massive creature weighing up to 25 tons, with a thick, heavy body supported by pillar-like legs that left footprints deep enough that paleontologists can still find them fossilized in ancient rock. And these were not the largest sauropods that ever lived, for the Cretaceous period would later produce even more massive species like Argentinosaurus and Patagotitan, creatures that may have weighed 100 tons or more and stood as tall as a 6-story building, representing the absolute upper limit of how large a land animal can possibly grow, while still being able to support its own weight and move. While the sauropods were evolving into gentle giants that dominated the herbivore niches, another group of dinosaurs was developing along a very different evolutionary path that would produce some of the most fearsome predators ever to walk the earth. The theropods were the carnivorous branch of the dinosaur family tree, and they maintained the bipedal stance and grasping hands of the earliest dinosaurs while evolving increasingly sophisticated hunting adaptations. During the Jurassic period, theropods diversified into numerous forms ranging from small, agile hunters no bigger than chickens to massive apex predators that could take down prey many times their own size. Allosaurus was one of the dominant predators of the late Jurassic, a powerful carnivore that grew to about 30 feet in length and possessed massive jaws filled with serrated teeth, perfectly designed for slicing through flesh. Allosaurus hunted the sauropods and other large herbivores of its time, possibly working in coordinated groups to bring down prey that no single individual could overcome. And fossil evidence, including bite marks and healed wounds on sauropod bones, tells us that these confrontations between predator and prey were brutal and often deadly for both parties. But the Jurassic period was not only about the large and spectacular dinosaurs, for this era also saw the evolution of numerous smaller dinosaurs that filled ecological niches similar to those occupied by small mammals and birds today. Compsognathus was a tiny theropod, about the size of a chicken, with delicate bones and long legs built for speed, hunting insects and small vertebrates in the undergrowth of Jurassic forests. Archaeopteryx, perhaps the most famous transitional fossil ever discovered, was another small theropod that had evolved feathers and wings, representing a critical link between dinosaurs and modern birds, and proving beyond any doubt that birds are actually living dinosaurs that survived the extinction event but killed their larger relatives. The discovery of Archaeopteryx fossils in the limestone quarries of Germany was a pivotal moment in paleontology, providing some of the strongest evidence for evolution and demonstrating that dinosaurs were far more diverse and complex than early scientists had ever imagined. Feathers, it turns out, did not evolve specifically for flight, but rather for insulation and display, and many dinosaurs that never flew were covered in various types of feathered coats that would have made them look quite different from the scaly reptilian monsters depicted in older books and movies. The world in which these Jurassic dinosaurs lived was dramatically different from the Earth we know today, and understanding this ancient environment helps us appreciate how truly alien the age of dinosaurs really was. The supercontinent of Pangaea was beginning to break apart during the Jurassic period, slowly splitting into the separate land masses that would eventually become our modern continents. But this process was still in its early stages, and much of the world's land was still connected. The climate was generally warm and humid, with no ice caps at the poles and sea levels much higher than today, creating shallow inland seas that covered large portions of what is now dry land. Forests of conifers, cycads and ginkgos covered the landscape, providing abundant food for herbivorous dinosaurs, but lacking the flowering plants and grasses that would only evolve later in the Cretaceous period. The air was filled with pterosaurs of various sizes, from small insect eaters to larger fish-eating species with wingspans of over 10 feet, and the oceans were dominated by marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs, rather than the whales and dolphins that would evolve much later. It was a world running on different rules, operating under different systems, and yet it was stable and successful for millions upon millions of years. As the Jurassic period gave way to the Cretaceous roughly 145 million years ago, the dinosaurs entered what would prove to be their final and in many ways their most spectacular era. The Cretaceous period would last for approximately 80 million years, an almost incomprehensible span of time, during which dinosaurs reached their peak diversity and occupied nearly every terrestrial habitat on Earth. The world itself was continuing to change, with the breakup of ancient supercontinents accelerating and creating increasingly isolated landmasses where evolution could proceed along separate paths, producing unique regional dinosaur faunas that differed dramatically from one another. Sea levels remained high throughout much of the Cretaceous, creating numerous inland seas and archipelagos that fragmented habitats and increased overall biodiversity. And crucially, the plant life of Earth underwent a revolutionary transformation during the Cretaceous, with the evolution and explosive spread of flowering plants, the angiosperms, which would fundamentally alter terrestrial ecosystems and create new opportunities for herbivorous dinosaurs to exploit. The early Cretaceous period saw the continuation and elaboration of evolutionary trends that had begun during the Jurassic, with sauropods remaining important members of many ecosystems but beginning to decline in diversity in some regions while flourishing in others. In South America, sauropods evolved to truly staggering sizes, with creatures like Argentinosaurus, Patagotitan, and Dreadnoughtus reaching weights estimated at 70 to 100 tons, making them the heaviest land animals that have ever existed, and possibly approaching the theoretical maximum size that a land animal can achieve before the laws of physics make further growth impossible. These titanosaurs, as this group of advanced sauropods is called, were particularly successful in the southern continents that had once formed the ancient supercontinent of Gondwana, and they remained abundant and diverse in South America, Africa and India right up until the very end of the age of dinosaurs. Meanwhile, in the northern continents that had formed from the ancient supercontinent of Laurasia, sauropods became less common or disappeared entirely from some regions, replaced by different types of herbivorous dinosaurs that were better adapted to the changing vegetation and environmental conditions. One of the most significant evolutionary developments of the Cretaceous period was the rise of the Ornithischians, the bird-hipped dinosaurs, who diversified into an extraordinary array of forms that made them some of the most successful and abundant herbivores of the late Cretaceous world. The Ornithischians are divided into several major groups, each with distinctive characteristics and adaptations that allowed them to exploit different food sources and habitats. The ceratopsians, or horned dinosaurs, evolved elaborate frills and horns that were used both for defense against predators and for display and combat within their own species. Triceratops, the most famous ceratopsian, was a massive animal weighing up to 12 tons, with 3 prominent horns on its face and an enormous bony frill that protected its neck and provided attachment points for powerful jaw muscles that could shear through even the toughest vegetation. These ceratopsians lived in herds that roamed the upland forests and plains of North America, and their abundance in the fossil record tells us that they were among the most successful large herbivores of their time, filling ecological roles similar to those of bison or wildebeest in modern ecosystems. The hadrosaurs, often called duck-billed dinosaurs, were another hugely successful group of ornithischians that dominated the herbivore niches in many Cretaceous ecosystems. These creatures had broad, flattened beaks similar to those of ducks, but behind these beaks were hundreds or even thousands of tiny teeth, arranged in complex dental batteries that worked like biological grinding mills, allowing hadrosaurs to process tough plant material with remarkable efficiency. Many hadrosaurs also possessed elaborate bony crests on their heads, hollow structures connected to their nasal passages that may have been used to produce loud, resonant calls for communication across long distances. Species like Parasaurolophus had crests extending backward from their heads in graceful curved tubes, while others like Corythosaurus had rounded crests that gave them distinctive profiles. Hadrosaurs were social animals that lived in large herds, as evidenced by mass death assemblages where dozens or even hundreds of individuals are found together, apparently killed simultaneously by floods or other disasters, and buried together in ancient sediments. Some hadrosaur nesting sites have been discovered with intact eggs and juveniles, providing rare insights into the family lives and parental care behaviors of these ancient creatures. The ankylosaurs and stegosaurs represented the armored division of the dinosaur world, creatures that had traded speed for protection and evolved elaborate defensive armor that made them nearly invulnerable to predator attacks. Stegosaurus, one of the most recognizable dinosaurs, lived during the late Jurassic and early Cretaceous periods and featured distinctive rows of large bony plates running along its back, though scientists still debate whether these plates were primarily for defense, temperature regulation, or display. Its tail was armed with 4 large spikes called a thagomizer, a weapon that could be swung with tremendous force to drive off attacking predators. Ankylosaurs took the concept of armor even further, with their entire bodies covered in thick bony plates embedded in their skin, and some species, like Ankylosaurus, possessing massive bony clubs at the ends of their tails that could deliver devastating blows, capable of breaking the bones of any predator foolish enough to attack them. These creatures were living tanks, and even the largest and most powerful predators would have found them extremely difficult to kill, making them examples of evolutionary strategies that prioritize defense and survival over mobility and speed. While the herbivorous dinosaurs of the Cretaceous period were achieving remarkable diversity and success, the carnivorous theropods were engaged in their own evolutionary arms race, developing increasingly sophisticated and deadly hunting adaptations to overcome the defenses of their prey. The pinnacle of this evolutionary process was the Tyrannosaurid family, a group of large predatory dinosaurs that appeared relatively late in the Cretaceous period, but quickly rose to become the dominant apex predators in the northern continents. These creatures represented the culmination of millions of years of theropod evolution, combining enormous size with powerful jaws, keen senses, and possibly even social hunting behaviors that made them the most formidable land predators that have ever existed. The most famous member of this family, and indeed the most famous dinosaur of all, was Tyrannosaurus rex, the tyrant lizard king, a creature that has captured human imagination like no other prehistoric animal, and that represents in popular culture the very essence of predatory power. Tyrannosaurus rex lived during the very end of the Cretaceous period, approximately 68 to 66 million years ago. In what is now Western North America, this creature was enormous even by dinosaur standards, with the largest specimens reaching lengths of over 40 feet from nose to tail and standing about 12 feet tall at the hips, with an estimated weight of anywhere from 8 to 14 tons depending on the individual and the estimation method used. The skull of T-Rex was massive and heavily built, measuring up to 5 feet in length, and packed with dozens of teeth that were as long as bananas and shaped like serrated railroad spikes, designed not to slice like the teeth of other large predators, but to crush and puncture through bone. The bite force of T-Rex has been estimated at over 6 tons per square inch, making it the most powerful bite of any terrestrial animal that has ever lived, capable of crunching through the bodies of its prey with devastating effect. When T-Rex bit down on another dinosaur, it did not just tear flesh but shattered bones, and the damage it inflicted was catastrophic and usually fatal within moments. The anatomy of Tyrannosaurus rex reveals an animal that was magnificently adapted for its role as an apex predator, with every aspect of its body optimized for hunting and killing large prey. Its legs were massively muscled and built for power rather than speed, and while older depictions often showed T. rex as a slow, lumbering creature, modern biomechanical analyses suggest it could move at speeds of at least 15 to 25 miles per hour, more than fast enough to chase down most of the herbivorous dinosaurs it hunted. Its tiny arms have been the subject of much speculation and some ridicule, that these arms were actually quite muscular and may have been used for holding struggling prey during feeding or for helping the animal rise from a prone position. The tail of T-Rex was thick and heavy, serving as a counterbalance to the massive head and allowing the animal to maintain balance while running and maneuvering, and its eyes faced forward rather than to the sides like those of most dinosaurs, providing binocular vision and excellent depth perception that would have been crucial for a predator that needed to judge distances accurately when pursuing and attacking prey. Recent research has revolutionized our understanding of T. rex and has revealed that these creatures were far more complex and sophisticated than early paleontologists ever imagined. Studies of tyrannosaur skulls have shown that they possessed excellent vision, better than that of modern eagles, allowing them to spot prey from great distances. Their sense of smell was also exceptionally developed, with enormous olfactory bulbs in their brains suggesting they could detect scents from miles away, making them proficient both at hunting live prey and at scavenging already dead animals. Evidence from bone growth rates indicates that T. rex went through an explosive growth phase during adolescence, gaining over 4 pounds per day during its teenage years and reaching adult size in less than 20 years, though individuals that survive to adult size in less than 20 years or more. The social behaviour of Rex remains controversial, with some scientists arguing that they were solitary hunters like most large predators, while others point to fossil sites where multiple individuals are found together and suggest they may have hunted in family groups or loose packs, which would have made them even more dangerous than a solitary individual could ever be. Perhaps the most surprising recent discovery about T. rex and its relatives is that at least some tyrannosaurs were covered with feathers, particularly when they were young, though it remains unclear whether large adults retained significant feathering or lost most of it as they grew to enormous sizes. Fossils of smaller tyrannosaur relatives from China have preserved clear impressions of feathers, and given what we now know about the prevalence of feathers among theropod dinosaurs, it seems increasingly likely that even the mighty T. rex may have had some feathered coating, at least in certain areas of its body. This revelation has been difficult for some people to accept because it challenges the traditional image of dinosaurs as purely reptilian monsters. But it actually makes these creatures even more fascinating because it emphasizes their connection to modern birds and reminds us that the line between dinosaurs and birds is not a line at all, but a continuum, with birds being the only surviving branch of the dinosaur family tree. Tyrannosaurus rex was not the only large predator of the late Cretaceous, and different continents hosted their own apex predators that filled similar ecological roles in their respective ecosystems. In South America, the dominant predators were the Carcharodontosaurids and Abelisaurids, groups of large theropods that evolved independently from tyrannosaurs but achieved similar sizes and predatory lifestyles. Giganotosaurus from Argentina may have been slightly larger than T. rex, though its skull was more lightly built and its bite force was considerably weaker, suggesting a different hunting strategy that relied more on slashing wounds than crushing bites. Maposaurus, another South American giant, has been found in bone beds containing multiple individuals of different ages, providing strong evidence that these predators hunted in groups, possibly cooperating to bring down the enormous titanosaur sauropods that were their primary prey. In Africa, Carcharodontosaurus was another massive predator, comparable in size to T. rex, and in North Africa, Spinosaurus evolved into perhaps the strangest large predator of all, a creature with a sail-like structure on its back, crocodile-like jaws, and adaptations suggesting it spent much of its time in water hunting fish and other aquatic prey. The story of the dinosaurs is not only about the famous giants and fearsome predators that dominate museum exhibits and popular media, for the Mesozoic era was filled with creatures of such bizarre appearance and unusual adaptations that they challenge our very understanding of what is possible in animal evolution. These strange dinosaurs occupied specialized ecological niches and developed features that seem almost fantastical, yet they were real living animals that thrived in their environments for millions of years before vanishing in the Great Extinction. Understanding these unusual creatures helps us appreciate the true diversity and evolutionary creativity of the dinosaur lineage, and reminds us that the prehistoric world was far stranger and more wonderful than we can easily imagine. Among the most peculiar of all dinosaurs were the Theraphynosaurs, a group of large theropods that abandoned carnivory entirely and evolved into specialized herbivores with adaptations unlike anything seen in other dinosaurs or indeed in any other animals that have ever lived. Therizinosaurus was one of the largest and most extreme members of this group, a creature that stood about 16 feet tall, possessed a pot-bellied body supported on thick hind legs, and was armed with the longest claws of any known animal, with individual claws reaching lengths of over 3 feet. These enormous claws were not used for hunting or fighting, but rather for pulling down branches and gathering vegetation, functioning essentially as giant rakes that allowed the animal to access food that other herbivores could not reach. The overall appearance of Therizinosaurus must have been truly bizarre, with its small head, long neck, massive body, and enormous arms tipped with those extraordinary claws an animal that looked like it had been assembled from parts of several different creatures. For many years, paleontologists struggled to understand therizonizers because the fossils were fragmentary and the combination of features seemed impossible, with some scientists initially thinking the claws belonged to a giant turtle, while others suggested they came from a previously unknown type of predatory dinosaur. Only when more complete skeletons were discovered did the true nature of these creatures become clear, revealing them as one of evolution's most unusual experiments. Another group of extraordinarily strange dinosaurs were the alvarezzosaurs, small theropods that evolved highly specialized forelimbs reduced to short, stubby arms ending in a single massive claw. These creatures, including species like Mononychus and Shuvuia, were about the size of chickens or turkeys, with long legs built for running and tiny arms that appear almost comically useless at first glance. However, these arms and their powerful claws were actually sophisticated tools for breaking into insect colonies, particularly the nests of termites and ants, allowing alvarezes to access protein-rich food sources that most other dinosaurs could not exploit. Their skulls were delicate and filled with small teeth, further supporting the idea that they fed on insects and other small invertebrates rather than the vegetation or meat that most dinosaurs consumed. The alvarezzosaurs demonstrate that even within the great radiation of dinosaur diversity, there were creatures that found success by becoming highly specialized for narrow ecological niches, much like modern anteaters or woodpeckers have done in more recent times. The pachycephalosaurs, or thick-headed dinosaurs, were another bizarre group that evolved skulls with massively thickened bone forming domes on the tops of their heads. Pachycephalosaurus itself had a skull dome that could be 10 inches thick, made of solid bone that could withstand tremendous impact forces. For decades, scientists assumed these dome-headed dinosaurs used their thick skulls for headbutting contests similar to those of modern rams or bighorn sheep, smashing their heads together in tests of strength during mating season or territorial disputes. However, more recent research has cast doubt on this interpretation, with some scientists arguing that the structure of the skull domes and the anatomy of the neck would have made direct head-to-head collisions dangerous and likely to cause serious injury. Alternative theories suggest the domes were used for flank butting, where rivals would strike each other's sides rather than meeting head-on, or that they were primarily display structures used for visual communication and species recognition rather than actual combat. Regardless of their exact function, the pachycephalosaurs remain among the most unusual dinosaurs, creatures whose behavior and lifestyle remain partially mysterious despite decades of study. The heterodontosaurs were small ornithischian dinosaurs from the early Jurassic period that possessed an unusual combination of different tooth types, including prominent canine-like tusks that gave them an almost mammalian appearance. These little dinosaurs were only about 3 feet long, with grasping hands and the ability to run quickly on their hind legs, and the presence of those distinctive tusks has led to considerable debate about their diet and lifestyle. Some scientists believe they were omnivores that used their varied teeth to process both plant material and small animals or insects, while others suggest they were herbivores who used their tusks for display and intraspecific combat rather than for feeding. Sexual dimorphism in tusk size, with some individuals having much larger tusks than others, supports the idea that these structures played a role in social behavior and competition for mates. The heterodontosaurs were not a dominant or particularly successful group in terms of diversity or geographic range, but they represent interesting experiments in dental evolution and remind us that early dinosaurs were exploring many different possible adaptations and lifestyles. Among the most spectacular and visually striking of all dinosaurs were the various species that evolved elaborate crests, frills, horns, and other display structures that serve functions beyond simple defense or feeding. Parasaurolophus possessed a long, backward curving tubular crest that extended from its skull for up to 6 feet, creating a distinctive profile that must have been immediately recognizable to other members of its species. This crest was hollow and connected to the nasal passages, and studies have shown it could have functioned as a resonating chamber that allowed the animal to produce loud, low-frequency calls that could travel for miles across the Cretaceous landscape. Different species of Parasaurolophus had differently shaped crests, and males and females may have had different crest forms as well. suggesting these structures served as visual signals for species recognition and mate selection in addition to their acoustic functions. Imagine the sounds that must have filled a Cretaceous valley when herds of hadrosaurs called to one another, deep resonant notes echoing off hillsides and carrying through the air. A prehistoric symphony that we will never hear but that paleontologists can now partially reconstruct using computer models and physical replicas of fossilized crests. The Spinosaurs were a family of large theropods that evolved unusual adaptations for a semi-aquatic lifestyle, making them among the most distinctive and controversial dinosaurs in terms of their ecology and behavior. Spinosaurus aegyptiacus, the largest member of this group, was an enormous predator that may have reached lengths of 50 feet or more, making it potentially the largest carnivorous dinosaur that ever lived, surpassing even Tyrannosaurus rex in overall size, though not in bite force or robustness. The most distinctive feature of Spinosaurus was the enormous sail-like structure on its back, formed by elongated neural spines that could be over 5 feet tall, creating a fin-like appearance when covered with skin. The function of this sail has been debated for decades, with theories ranging from temperature regulation to fat storage to display, but the most recent research suggests it may have served multiple purposes, including visual signaling and possibly even assisting with stability while swimming. Recent discoveries have revealed that Spinosaurus had dense bones, similar to those of penguins and other diving animals, a paddle-like tail suited for aquatic propulsion, and nostrils positioned high on its skull like those of crocodiles, all suggesting this dinosaur spent considerable time in water hunting fish and other aquatic prey. While dinosaurs dominated the land throughout the Mesozoic era, the skies and seas of that ancient world were ruled by other remarkable reptiles that, though not technically dinosaurs themselves, were closely related and equally fascinating. These flying and swimming reptiles evolved in parallel with the dinosaurs and filled crucial ecological roles that the dinosaurs themselves never occupied, creating a complete ecosystem where reptilian dominance extended across all environments from the depths of the oceans to the heights of the atmosphere. Understanding these creatures is essential to grasping the full scope of the Mesozoic world and appreciating how thoroughly the age of reptiles had transformed the planet into something utterly alien to our modern experience. The pterosaurs were the undisputed masters of the Mesozoic skies, a diverse and successful group of flying reptiles that ranged from sparrow-sized insect eaters to creatures with wingspans exceeding those of small aircraft, representing the first vertebrates other than insects to achieve powered flight and maintaining their aerial dominance for over 160 million years. The earliest pterosaurs appeared in the late Triassic period, roughly 220 million years ago, and by the Jurassic period, they had already diversified into numerous forms, adapted to different flying styles and feeding strategies. These early pterosaurs, known as rhamphorhynchoids, typically had long tails that helped with stability during flight, and relatively short wingspans compared to their later relatives. Dimorphodon was a characteristic example, a crow-sized pterosaur with a large head containing 2 types of teeth, probably feeding on insects and small vertebrates along coastal areas and riverbanks. As the Mesozoic era progressed, pterosaurs evolved toward larger sizes and more specialized forms, eventually giving rise to the pterodactyloids, a group that included some of the largest flying animals that have ever existed. These advanced pterosaurs had reduced or eliminated the long tail of their ancestors and evolved longer necks and wings, along with increasingly diverse skull shapes and dental arrangements that reflected specializations for different diets. Pteranodon was one of the most successful and well-known pterosaurs of the late Cretaceous period, with a wingspan of approximately 20 feet and a distinctive backward-pointing crest on its head that may have served as a rudder during flight or as a visual display structure for attracting mates and intimidating rivals. Pteranodon was toothless, possessing a long, pointed beak that it used to catch fish from the surface of the inland sea, the covered much of central North America during that time. Fossil evidence suggests Pteranodon spent much of its time soaring on air currents like modern albatrosses, using its large wings to glide efficiently over vast distances with minimal energy expenditure, only occasionally flapping to gain altitude or change direction. These creatures were so well adapted to flight that they probably spent very little time on the ground, where their anatomy would have made them awkward and vulnerable, instead landing only to nest on coastal cliffs or offshore islands, where predators could not easily reach them. But Pteranodon was not the largest pterosaur, not even close. For the Cretaceous period produced flying reptiles of such tremendous size that they challenge our understanding of the physical limits of animal flight. Quetzalcoatlus was a truly gigantic pterosaur from late Cretaceous North America, with a wingspan estimated at 33 to 36 feet, roughly equivalent to a modern F-16 fighter jet, and standing as tall as a giraffe when on the ground. This enormous creature weighed approximately 400 to 500 pounds, remarkably light for its size thanks to hollow bones and air sacs that reduced its overall mass while maintaining structural strength. Quetzalcoatlus was toothless, and may have been a terrestrial stalker when on the ground, walking on all fours and using its long neck and beak to probe for small animals and carrion, essentially functioning as a massive stork-like predator. When airborne, Quetzalcoatlus probably soared on thermal currents like modern vultures, using rising columns of warm air to gain altitude, and then gliding for hundreds of miles in search of food, its keen eyesight scanning the landscape below for opportunities to feed. The mechanics of how such a large animal could take off and achieve flight remain subjects of scientific investigation and debate, but computer models suggest it could launch itself into the air with a powerful leap using all four limbs, generating enough initial velocity to begin flapping and gain altitude. While pterosaurs commanded the air, the oceans of the Mesozoic were home to an equally impressive array of marine reptiles that had returned to the sea from terrestrial ancestors and evolved remarkable adaptations for aquatic life. The ichthyosaurs were among the most successful marine reptiles, creatures that converge remarkably on the body form of modern dolphins, despite being completely unrelated, demonstrating how similar environmental pressures can produce similar solutions through the process of convergent evolution. The earliest ichthyosaurs appeared in the early Triassic period, shortly after the Great Permian extinction, and they quickly diversified into numerous forms, ranging from small inshore species to enormous deep-water predators. Shonosaurus was one of the largest ichthyosaurs, reaching lengths of over 50 feet, and possibly feeding on squid and fish in the deep waters of the Triassic Ocean. The classic ichthyosaur body plan featured a streamlined torpedo-shaped body, a tail with a vertical crescent-shaped fin, paddle-like limbs for steering, and a long, narrow snout filled with sharp teeth for catching slippery prey. Ichthyosaurs were so well adapted to marine life that they could not come ashore even to lay eggs, and fossil evidence, including specimens preserved in the act of giving birth, proves that they were viviparous, giving birth to live young in the water like modern whales and dolphins. Some remarkably preserved ichthyosaur fossils from Germany even show the outline of soft tissues including the dorsal fin and tail flukes, along with fossilized stomach contents revealing their last meals of fish and squid. The eyes of ichthyosaurs were enormous, in some species reaching sizes of up to 10 inches in diameter, making them among the largest eyes of any animal that has ever lived, and suggesting they hunted in deep or murky water, where excellent vision was essential for detecting prey and navigating. Ichthyosaurs were particularly diverse and abundant during the Jurassic period, but they declined significantly during the Cretaceous and went extinct approximately 90 million years ago, roughly 25 million years before the final extinction event that killed the dinosaurs, making them one of the few major Mesozoic reptile groups to disappear before that cataclysmic event. The plesiosaurs were another major group of marine reptiles with a very different body plan from ichthyosaurs, featuring 4 large flippers used for underwater flight in a swimming style unique among vertebrates. Plesiosaurs came in 2 basic forms, both of which were successful and diverse. The long-necked plesiosaurs, sometimes called plesiosauroids, had small heads on extremely elongated necks that could contain as many as 76 vertebrae, more than any other animal. Elasmosaurus was perhaps the most extreme example, with a neck that could reach lengths of 23 feet, more than half the animal's total body length, allowing it to position its head with great precision while its body remained relatively motionless. These long-necked forms probably fed on fish and squid, using their necks to strike rapidly at prey with minimal disturbance of the surrounding water. The alternative body plan was represented by the plesiosaurs, short-necked forms with massive heads and extremely powerful jaws that made them apex predators of the Mesozoic seas, capable of attacking and killing virtually any other marine animal, including other plesiosaurs, large fish, and even sharks. Liopleurodon and Kronosaurus from the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods respectively, reaching lengths of 20 to 30 feet and possessing skulls up to 10 feet long filled with teeth like steak knives. These creatures were the great white sharks of their time, but far more powerful and dangerous, with bite forces that may have exceeded even that of Tyrannosaurus rex. Fossil evidence, including bite marks on other marine reptile bones and the fossilized stomach contents of some specimens, proves that pliosaurs attacked and consumed other large marine reptiles, making them true super predators that sat at the very top of the oceanic food chain. The plesiosaurs as a group survived until the very end of the Cretaceous period, and were among the victims of the extinction event that killed the dinosaurs, disappearing simultaneously with their terrestrial cousins and leaving the oceans to be eventually colonized by mammals in the form of whales and seals. The mosasaurs were the final group of giant marine reptiles to evolve during the Mesozoic era, appearing relatively late in the Cretaceous period but quickly radiating into numerous forms that dominated the oceans during the final 25 million years of the dinosaur age. Mosasaurs were actually modified lizards, related to modern monitor lizards and snakes, that had returned to the sea and evolved paddle-like limbs, powerful swimming tails, and streamlined bodies. Mosasaurus itself was an enormous predator, reaching lengths of over 50 feet, with massive jaws that could open wide enough to swallow large prey whole, and teeth designed for both cutting and crushing. Fossil evidence shows mosasaurs fed on virtually everything available in their environment, including fish, sea turtles, ammonites, other marine reptiles, and even seabirds unlucky enough to be caught on the water's surface. Some mosasaur fossils preserve evidence of shark bites that healed during the animal's lifetime, indicating these creatures could survive even serious injuries and continue living. And other specimens show pathologies and diseases that provide insights into the health and life histories of individual animals. The mosasaurs were at the height of their success and diversity when the end Cretaceous extinction event struck, and they vanished completely, leaving no descendants and no lineage to carry their legacy forward into the age of mammals. The dinosaurs did not exist in isolation, but were integral components of complex ecosystems that functioned according to principles both similar to and different from the ecosystems we observe today. Understanding these ancient ecological systems requires us to look beyond the individual species and consider the relationships between organisms, the flow of energy through food webs, and the ways in which different creatures influenced and shaped their environments. The Mesozoic world was built on foundations of plant life that changed dramatically over time, with the floor of the Triassic and Jurassic periods being fundamentally different from that of the Cretaceous, and these changes in vegetation had profound effects on the herbivorous dinosaurs, and consequently on the predators that hunted them. The continents themselves were moving, climates were shifting, and the stage upon which the dinosaur drama played out was constantly being rebuilt and reconfigured by tectonic forces and climatic changes that operated on scales both vast and subtle. During the Triassic and Jurassic periods, the terrestrial plant life was dominated by gymnosperms, a group that includes conifers, cycads, ginkgos, and various extinct forms that have no modern equivalents. These plants reproduced using seeds, but lack the flowers and fruits that would later become so important in terrestrial ecosystems. Conifer forests, similar to modern pine and redwood forests, covered vast areas, providing food for sauropods and other herbivores who could digest the tough, resinous foliage with the help of gastroliths and specialized digestive systems. Cycads, which superficially resemble palm trees but are actually unrelated, were particularly abundant and diverse, with species ranging from small ground-hugging forms to tall tree-like plants, and these were important food sources for many dinosaurs throughout the Mesozoic era. Ginkgos, trees that today survive in only a single species that is essentially a living fossil, were once diverse and widespread, their distinctive fan-shaped leaves common in Mesozoic plant fossil assemblages. Ferns and horsetails filled the understory of forests and dominated wetland areas, creating dense tangles of vegetation that provided habitat for small dinosaurs and other animals. The landscape of the Jurassic period would have looked alien to modern eyes despite the presence of many familiar plant groups, because the flowering plants that dominate modern terrestrial environments had not yet evolved, and the visual appearance of vegetation was fundamentally different. The forests were darker and more uniform in colour, lacking the bright flowers and colourful fruits that add such variety to modern ecosystems. The understory was filled with ferns and cycads rather than the broad-leaved herbaceous plants and grasses that are common today, and the entire structure of plant communities was different. The appearance of flowering plants created new food sources for herbivorous dinosaurs, particularly smaller ornithischians, who could browse on the nutritious leaves, fruits and seeds that these plants produced. Some scientists believe that the radiation of ceratopsians, hadrosaurs, and other advanced ornithischians during the late Cretaceous was at least partially driven by the spread of flowering plants, as these dinosaurs evolved increasingly sophisticated dental batteries and digestive systems to process the new types of vegetation. The coevolution of flowering plants and the insects that pollinated them was another crucial development of the Cretaceous period, though this story involves dinosaurs only indirectly. Bees, butterflies, and many other pollinating insects diversified alongside the flowering plants they depended upon, creating intricate mutualisms that drove both groups to increasing diversity and complexity. Small insectivorous dinosaurs and early birds benefited from this insect radiation, having abundant prey to feed upon, and the energy captured by flowering plants flowed through food webs in new and more efficient ways. The Cretaceous world was becoming more productive, more diverse, and more complex, with ecosystems that in many ways resembled modern tropical forests and grasslands, despite the presence of dinosaurs instead of mammals in most of the large animal roles. Had the extinction event not occurred, it is fascinating to speculate how much farther this trajectory might have continued, and what strange and wonderful ecosystems might have evolved given another 100 million years of dinosaurian dominance. The relationship between herbivorous dinosaurs and the plants they consumed was not simply a one-way exploitation where animals ate plants with no reciprocal effects. Large herbivores fundamentally shaped their environments through their feeding, trampling, and defecation, and the Mesozoic megaherbivores would have had enormous impacts on vegetation structure and plant community composition. Sauropods browsing on tree foliage would have created gaps in the forest canopy, allowing light to reach the forest floor and promoting the growth of understory plants. Their enormous dung piles would have provided concentrated sources of nutrients that affected local soil chemistry and created distinctive plant communities. The paths and trails created by herds of large dinosaurs moving across the landscape would have influenced water drainage patterns and created linear disturbances that some plants could exploit. And the selective feeding preferences of different herbivore species would have affected which plants were successful and which were suppressed, essentially creating a constantly shifting mosaic of vegetation types maintained by the activities of the animals feeding upon them. The predator-prey relationships in dinosaur ecosystems were undoubtedly complex and dynamic, with both hunters and hunted engaged in evolutionary arms races that drove adaptations on both sides. Large theropods like Tyrannosaurus and Allosaurus faced the challenge of taking down prey animals that were often much larger than themselves and equipped with formidable defenses. Hunting such dangerous prey likely required either exceptional individual prowess or social cooperation, and the evidence for pack hunting in some species suggests that at least some theropods had evolved the behavioral complexity necessary for coordinated group hunting. The herbivores, for their part, employed various defensive strategies including armor, weapons, herding behavior, and sheer size to protect themselves from predation. Juvenile dinosaurs were particularly vulnerable to predation, and the survival rates from egg to adulthood were probably quite low for most species, with predators taking a heavy toll on young animals before they could reach the relative safety of adult size. The evidence from fossilized trackways, bone beds, and nesting sites provides valuable insights into dinosaur social behavior and ecology that cannot be obtained from individual skeletons alone. Many species of both herbivorous and carnivorous dinosaurs show evidence of gregarious behavior, living in groups that range from small family units to enormous herds containing hundreds or thousands of individuals. Trackways showing multiple individuals moving in the same direction suggest coordinated movement and social cohesion. Nesting colonies where many individuals laid eggs in close proximity indicate at least temporary aggregations for breeding purposes and possibly more complex social structures. The discovery of adult dinosaurs associated with juveniles of various ages suggests parental care and extended family groups in some species. And the presence of multiple age classes within single bone bed deposits indicates that at least some species maintain stable multi-generational groups rather than segregating by age or size. All of this evidence paints a picture of dinosaurs as behaviorally complex animals, with social lives that were probably at least as sophisticated as those of modern birds and crocodiles, and possibly rivaling the social complexity seen in mammals. Among the many questions that fascinate both scientists and the general public regarding dinosaurs, few are more intriguing or more difficult to answer than questions about dinosaur intelligence and cognitive abilities. Intelligence is notoriously difficult to define and measure even in living animals, and the challenge becomes vastly more complicated when dealing with extinct creatures known only from fossilized bones and occasional traces of behavior preserved in ancient rocks. Yet paleontologists have developed various indirect methods for estimating the cognitive capabilities of dinosaurs. And while we will never know exactly what it was like to be a dinosaur, or how these creatures perceived and interpreted their world, we can make educated inferences based on brain anatomy, sensory capabilities, and behavioral evidence. The results of these investigations reveal that dinosaurs spanned a wide range of cognitive abilities, from species that were probably quite simple in their mental lives to others that may have possessed surprisingly sophisticated intelligence comparable to that of modern birds and mammals. The study of dinosaur intelligence begins with the examination of the brain case, the portion of the skull that housed the brain, which can be studied directly in well-preserved fossils or reconstructed using CT scanning technology that allows scientists to create three-dimensional models of internal structures without damaging precious specimens. By measuring the volume of the brain case and comparing it to the body size of the animal, paleontologists can calculate the encephalization quotient, a measure that indicates whether a species had a brain larger or smaller than expected for its body size. Animals with high encephalization quotients relative to other members of their group are generally more intelligent and capable of more complex behaviors. Among dinosaurs, the theropods consistently show the highest encephalization quotients, particularly the smaller, more agile species that were likely active predators requiring good sensory processing and behavioral flexibility to successfully hunt mobile prey. Troodon was a small theropod from the late Cretaceous of North America that has long been recognized as one of the most intelligent dinosaurs, possessing a brain-to-body size ratio that approaches or possibly exceeds that of modern birds. This creature was about 6 feet long, lightly built with long legs adapted for running, and possessed large eyes that faced partially forward, providing some degree of binocular vision and depth perception. The hands of Troodon were equipped with a large, sickle-shaped claw on the second toe of each foot, similar to but smaller than the famous killing claw of Velociraptor, suggesting it was an active predator that used these weapons to dispatch prey. The relatively large brain of Troodon, combined with its advanced sensory capabilities and agile body, has led some scientists to speculate that this dinosaur may have been capable of relatively complex behaviors, including possibly cooperative hunting, sophisticated navigation, and perhaps even simple tool use or problem solving. Though such speculation far exceeds what the fossil evidence can actually demonstrate. The dromaeosaurids, the group that includes Velociraptor, Deinonychus and their relatives, were another family of theropods that showed evidence of relatively high intelligence. These creatures were small to medium-sized predators, characterized by their large sickle-shaped claws, long stiff tails that provided balance, and skulls equipped with sharp teeth and large eyes. Deinonychus, discovered in Montana in the 1960s, was a particularly important species because its anatomy and the circumstances under which its fossils were found provided evidence for active, warm-blooded metabolism and possibly pack-hunting behavior. Several Deinonychus skeletons were found in association with the skeleton of a much larger herbivorous dinosaur called Tenontosaurus, suggesting that multiple predators had attacked this prey animal either simultaneously or in rapid succession, though whether this represents true coordinated hunting or simply opportunistic scavenging by multiple individuals attracted to the same carcass remains debatable. The intelligence of dromaeosaurids was probably at least comparable to that of modern crows or parrots, making them among the smartest reptiles ever to live, though still far below the cognitive capabilities of dolphins, primates or humans. At the opposite end of the intelligence spectrum were the large sauropods, whose brains were extremely small relative to their enormous body sizes. Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus had brains that weighed only a few pounds despite body weights measured in tens of tons, resulting in some of the lowest encephalization quotients of any dinosaurs. This has led to popular images of sauropods as dim-witted creatures operating almost entirely on instinct, with little capacity for learning or behavioral flexibility. However, this characterization may be somewhat unfair, as even a small brain can support surprisingly complex behaviors if it is organized efficiently, and modern animals with relatively small brains like birds demonstrate that high intelligence does not necessarily require large absolute brain size. Additionally, some sauropods showed evidence of complex social behaviors, including herding, possible migration over long distances, and parental care of young, all of which suggest at least moderate behavioral sophistication. The truth is probably that sauropods were not particularly intelligent by mammalian or avian standards, but neither were they the mindless eating machines they are sometimes portrayed as, and they possessed the cognitive abilities necessary to successfully navigate their environments, find food and water, avoid predators, and reproduce successfully for over 100 million years. The evidence for social behavior and communication in dinosaurs provides additional insights into their cognitive capabilities, as species that live in complex social groups typically require more sophisticated mental abilities than solitary species. The discovery of dinosaur nesting colonies, where multiple individuals laid eggs in close proximity and may have cooperatively defended the nesting area, suggests at least temporary social aggregation and possibly more complex social structures. The elaborate crests, frills, horns, and other display structures that adorn many dinosaur species were almost certainly used for visual communication, allowing individuals to recognize members of their own species, assess the age and sex of other individuals, and engage in dominance displays and mating rituals. The hollow crests of hadrosaurs could produce loud, resonant calls that would have been useful for long-distance communication in dense forests or across open plains, suggesting these animals maintained acoustic contact with herd members even when visual contact was not possible. And the diversity of display structures across different species indicates that dinosaurs could visually discriminate between different forms and patterns, a cognitive capability that requires decent visual processing and memory. Some scientists have speculated about the possibility of cultural transmission of behaviors in intelligent dinosaur species. The learning and sharing of learned behaviors across individuals and generations that represents a crucial component of intelligence in modern mammals and birds. While such cultural transmission cannot be directly proven in extinct species, the behavioral complexity indicated by cooperative hunting, complex display behaviors, and extended parental care in some dinosaurs suggests that at least the most intelligent species may have been capable of learning from observation and modifying their behaviors based on experience. Young dinosaurs growing up in family groups or herds would have had ample opportunity to observe and learn from adults, potentially acquiring knowledge about migration routes, water sources, dangerous predators, and favorable feeding areas that could not be genetically programmed, but rather had to be learned through individual experience or social transmission. If this speculation is correct, then the extinction of the dinosaurs represents not only the loss of species and genetic diversity, but also the loss of accumulated cultural knowledge that may have taken millions of years to develop. The entire edifice of our knowledge about dinosaurs rests upon the foundation of fossils, the preserved remains and traces of ancient life that provide our only direct evidence for creatures that vanished millions of years before humans evolved. Understanding how fossils form, how they are discovered and studied, and what they can and cannot tell us is essential to appreciating both the remarkable achievements of paleontology and the significant gaps that remain in our knowledge of dinosaur biology and ecology. Fossilization is an extraordinarily rare event, requiring a precise combination of circumstances that occurs only occasionally, even over millions of years, and the fossil record therefore provides only a highly incomplete and biased sample of the life that once existed. Most organisms that die are quickly consumed by scavengers, decomposed by bacteria, or broken down by weather and geological processes, leaving no permanent trace of their existence. For fossilization to occur, a dead organism must be rapidly buried in sediment before it can be completely destroyed, and then must remain undisturbed in an environment where the organic materials of bone or other hard parts can be gradually replaced by minerals, turning the once living tissue into stone. The process of fossilization typically begins when an animal dies in or near water, as aquatic environments provide the rapid burial in sediment that is necessary for preservation. Rivers, lakes, swamps, and coastal marine environments are therefore the settings where most fossils form, while animals that died in upland areas far from water were rarely fossilized because their remains were exposed to weathering and scavenging for too long. After burial, the bones or other hard parts are slowly infiltrated by minerals carried in groundwater, with the original organic material being gradually replaced by stone in a process that can take thousands or millions of years. The resulting fossil is essentially a rock replica of the original bone, preserving the external shape and often the internal structure in remarkable detail, but containing none of the original biological material. In exceptional cases, soft tissues like skin, feathers, or even internal organs can leave impressions in the surrounding sediment, or can be preserved through unusual chemical processes, providing rare windows into aspects of dinosaur anatomy that are normally lost to time. The geographic distribution of dinosaur fossils is highly uneven, with some regions of the world producing abundant and diverse specimens, while others have yielded relatively few finds despite extensive searching. The western United States and Canada have been particularly productive with famous fossil formations like the Morrison Formation of the late Jurassic and the Hell Creek Formation of the late Cretaceous, providing thousands of dinosaur specimens representing dozens of species. Argentina and China have also emerged as paleontological hotspots in recent decades, with discoveries of numerous new species including many feathered dinosaurs from China that have revolutionized our understanding of the dinosaur-bird connection. Mongolia, with its Gobi Desert preserving spectacular fossils including complete skeletons and even fighting dinosaurs frozen in combat, has yielded crucial insights into dinosaur behavior and ecology. Meanwhile, other regions, including much of Africa, Southeast Asia, and Australia, have produced far fewer dinosaur fossils, though whether this reflects true differences in past dinosaur diversity or simply geological and collective biases remains unclear. The actual discovery of dinosaur fossils is a process that combines scientific knowledge, physical endurance, keen observation, and often considerable luck. Paleontologists search in areas where rocks of the appropriate age and type are exposed at the surface, typically in badlands, cliff faces, quarries, or other locations where erosion has removed overlying material and brought ancient rocks to the surface. Walking these areas requires a trained eye capable of recognizing the subtle color and texture differences that distinguish fossil bone from surrounding rock, and many potentially important fossils are probably walked past by untrained observers who do not recognize what they are seeing. When a fossil is spotted, the surrounding area must be carefully examined to determine the extent of the find and to locate any additional bones that may be present. Some fossils consist of only a single isolated bone, while others are partial skeletons or rarely complete articulated specimens, where the entire skeleton remains in its original anatomical arrangement. The excavation of dinosaur fossils is painstaking work that can take weeks or months for large specimens, requiring careful removal of surrounding rock while leaving the fossil in a protective jacket of plaster and burlap that prevents damage during transport. Once the fossil arrives at a museum or research institution, the real work of preparation begins. The skilled technicians use small tools, air abrasives and sometimes acid baths to remove the remaining rock matrix and fully expose the fossil. This process can take years for large or delicate specimens, and during this work new details are constantly being revealed that add to our understanding of the animal. After preparation is complete, the fossil can be studied by scientists, measured, photographed, and compared to other specimens, and eventually the information gained may be published in scientific journals where it becomes part of the permanent record of paleontological knowledge. The best fossils are often mounted for display in museum exhibitions, where they inspire and educate millions of visitors and help maintain public interest in paleontology and natural history. The interpretation of fossils requires scientists to make inferences that go far beyond what the bones themselves can directly reveal. The skeleton provides information about body size, body proportions, the structure of muscles and organs, and the animal's likely posture and locomotion, but many aspects of dinosaur biology remain speculative. Soft tissue features like skin color, the presence and arrangement of scales or feathers, fat distribution and the appearance of display structures are rarely preserved and must be reconstructed through comparison with living relatives and through biomechanical principles. Behavior, intelligence, metabolism, and social structure must be inferred from indirect evidence like trackways, nesting sites, bone bed assemblages, and the relative sizes of brain cases and sensory organs. Scientists must constantly balance between making reasonable inferences based on available evidence and avoiding speculation that exceeds what the data can actually support. And honest disagreements between paleontologists about how to interpret ambiguous evidence are common and drive the field forward through continued research and debate. Recent technological advances have opened new possibilities for studying dinosaur fossils and extracting information that previous generations of paleontologists could never have accessed. CT scanning allows researchers to examine the internal structure of fossils without cutting them apart, revealing details of brain cavities, inner ear structure, and even the fossilized contents of body cavities. Chemical analysis of fossil bone and surrounding sediments can provide information about diet, metabolism, body temperature, and even in some cases the presence of biomolecules that have survived the fossilization process. Sophisticated computer modeling allows scientists to reconstruct dinosaur locomotion, test hypotheses about bite force and feeding mechanics, and estimate metabolic rates based on bone growth patterns. And the discovery of exceptionally preserved fossils with soft tissue remains, including feathers, skin impressions and dispersions, and even possible coloration patterns preserved as chemical signatures, has provided revolutionary new insights into what dinosaurs really looked like and how they functioned as living animals rather than mere skeletons. Among the many scientific controversies that have animated paleontology over the past half-century, few have been more contentious or more consequential than the debate over dinosaur metabolism and whether these creatures were warm-blooded, cold-blooded, or something in between. This question is not merely academic trivia, but goes to the heart of understanding dinosaurs as living animals, affecting our interpretations of their behavior, ecology, evolutionary success, and ultimate extinction. The traditional view, dominant throughout most of the 20th century, held that dinosaurs were typical reptiles with ectothermic or cold-blooded metabolism, meaning they relied primarily on external heat sources to regulate their body temperature and had relatively low resting metabolic rates similar to modern lizards and crocodiles. This view was based on the reptilian ancestry of dinosaurs and the assumption that the basic metabolic characteristics of reptiles had remained unchanged throughout their evolutionary history. However, beginning in the 1960s and accelerating through subsequent decades, a revolution in thinking about dinosaur physiology challenged this orthodox view and argued that at least some dinosaurs possessed endothermic or warm-blooded metabolism similar to that of modern birds and mammals. The warm-blooded dinosaur hypothesis was championed most prominently by paleontologist John Ostrom and his student Robert Bakker, who argued that numerous lines of evidence pointed to active, energetic animals with high metabolic rates rather than sluggish reptiles dependent on basking in the sun for body heat. One key piece of evidence was the upright posture and limb structure of dinosaurs, with legs positioned directly underneath the body, rather than sprawling out to the sides like those of lizards and crocodiles. This upright posture is seen in modern mammals and birds, but not in ectothermic reptiles, and it is associated with sustained activity and efficient locomotion that requires the consistent energy supply provided by endothermic metabolism. Trackway evidence showing that many dinosaurs could move rapidly and apparently maintain fast speeds over considerable distances also suggested high activity levels inconsistent with ectothermic physiology, and the bone microstructure of many dinosaurs showed patterns of rapid growth and extensive vascularization similar to those of endothermic animals rather than the slower growth and less vascular bone typical of ectotherms. Additional evidence supporting high metabolic rates in dinosaurs came from paleobiogeographic distributions, showing that some species lived at high latitudes where temperatures would have been too cold for typical ectothermic reptiles to remain active. Fossil deposits from Alaska and Australia during the Cretaceous period, when these regions were located at polar latitudes though with climates warmer than today's polar regions, contain abundant dinosaur remains, including species that apparently lived year-round in these areas rather than migrating to warmer regions. The ability to remain active in cool or even cold environments strongly suggests some capacity for internal heat generation that goes beyond simple ectothermy. Furthermore, the predator-prey ratios found in dinosaur fossil assemblages are often more similar to those of modern mammalian communities than to those of modern reptilian communities, with relatively low numbers of predators compared to herbivores, suggesting that dinosaurian predators required large quantities of prey to maintain their energy demands, as would be expected for endothermic hunters. However, The warm-blooded dinosaur hypothesis also faces significant challenges and criticisms, and the debate remains far from resolved. Despite decades of research, the enormous body sizes of many dinosaurs, particularly the giant sauropods, present problems for simple endothermy because such massive animals would generate enormous quantities of waste heat through normal metabolic processes, and dissipating this heat would be extremely difficult without specialized cooling mechanisms. Some scientists have calculated that large sauropods would actually have needed to have reduced metabolic rates compared to smaller animals to avoid fatal overheating, making them more similar to ectotherms in their overall energy budgets, despite potentially having different thermoregulatory mechanisms. Additionally, the evidence for high growth rates in dinosaurs, while suggestive of elevated metabolism, is not conclusive because large ectothermic reptiles like crocodiles also show relatively rapid growth when young and have access to abundant food. The current scientific consensus, to the extent that one exists, suggests that dinosaur metabolism was probably diverse and complex, with different groups and different species occupying different positions along the spectrum between pure ectothermy and pure endothermy. The term mesothermy has been coined to describe an intermediate condition where animals maintain relatively stable body temperatures through a combination of internal heat generation and behavioral thermoregulation, without necessarily having the extremely high metabolic rates of modern birds and mammals. Large dinosaurs may have achieved stable body temperatures primarily through gigantothermy, the simple fact that very large objects heat up and cool down slowly, allowing a multi-ton dinosaur to maintain relatively constant temperature even without internally generating heat at mammalian rates. Smaller dinosaurs, particularly the active theropods that were the ancestors of birds, may have had true endothermic metabolism with high resting metabolic rates and the ability to remain active regardless of environmental temperature. And some groups may have possessed intermediate physiologies that combined aspects of both strategies. The discovery that many dinosaurs possessed feathery body coverings has added another dimension to the metabolism debate, as feathers are excellent insulators that make sense primarily for animals that generate significant internal heat requiring retention. While early feathers may have evolved for display rather than thermoregulation, their subsequent elaboration and the appearance of downy, insulating feather types strongly suggests that at least the feathered dinosaurs were generating enough body heat to make insulation beneficial. The preservation of complex feather structures in numerous small theropod fossils from China has demonstrated that feathers were widespread among at least this group of dinosaurs, and the discovery of simple filamentous proto-feathers in some ornithischian dinosaurs suggests that feather-like structures may have been even more widespread than previously thought. Birds, the living descendants of theropod dinosaurs, are endothermic, with metabolic rates even higher than those of comparably sized mammals, and it seems increasingly likely that the evolution of endothermy in birds occurred gradually within their dinosaurian ancestors rather than suddenly at the origin of birds themselves. The implications of the metabolism debate extend far beyond the technical details of dinosaur physiology to influence our entire understanding of what these animals were like as living creatures. Endothermic dinosaurs would have been active, energetic animals capable of sustained high levels of activity regardless of environmental conditions, perhaps engaging in complex behaviors including long-distance migration, sophisticated social interactions, and intensive parental care of offspring. They would have required large amounts of food to fuel their high metabolic rates, fundamentally affecting ecosystem structure and energy flow. And they would have been competitors with early mammals for ecological niches requiring high activity levels and good endurance, potentially explaining why mammals remained relatively small and ecologically marginal throughout the Mesozoic era. Ectothermic dinosaurs, by contrast, would have been more typical reptiles, behaviorally sophisticated perhaps, but fundamentally limited by their dependence on environmental heat and their need to balance activity against the risk of overheating or chilling. The truth probably lies somewhere between these extremes, with dinosaurs showing a range of metabolic strategies that made them successful in a wide variety of environments and ecological roles. The reign of the dinosaurs, despite its apparent stability and success spanning over 160 million years, was not a period of unchanging dominance, but rather a dynamic era punctuated by environmental changes, evolutionary innovations, and periodic crises that challenged different dinosaur groups in different ways. The Late Cretaceous period, the final chapter in the Age of Dinosaurs, was a time of particular environmental instability and change that created challenging conditions even before the catastrophic extinction event that would finally end their dominance. Sea levels were in flux, rising to some of the highest levels in Earth's history during the Mid-Cretaceous, and then beginning to fall during the Late Cretaceous, draining the inland seas that had covered large portions of continents and fundamentally altering climate patterns and habitat distributions. Continental positions were shifting toward their modern configurations as the breakup of Pangaea continued, increasing the isolation of different continental blocks and allowing dinosaur faunas to diverge into increasingly distinct regional assemblages. The climate during the Late Cretaceous was generally warm and equable, with temperatures significantly higher than today and no permanent ice caps at either pole. But this overall warmth masked increasing climatic instability and regional variation. Evidence from ocean sediments and fossil plants indicates that global temperatures fluctuated considerably during the Late Cretaceous, with cooling episodes interspersed with warmer intervals, creating challenging and changeable conditions for terrestrial ecosystems. The fall in sea level that characterized the latest Cretaceous would have connected previously isolated land masses, allowing dinosaur populations that had evolved separately to come into contact and compete, potentially leading to competitive exclusion of some species by others. Additionally, volcanic activity was increasing globally during the Late Cretaceous, with massive eruptions in various parts of the world, including the Deccan Traps in what is now India, where millions of cubic kilometers of lava were erupted over a period of several 100,000 years in the very latest Cretaceous. Some paleontologists have argued that dinosaur diversity was already declining in the few million years before the final extinction event, suggesting that the dinosaurs were a group in decline whose demise might have occurred eventually, even without the cosmic catastrophe that actually killed them. Evidence cited for this decline includes the apparent reduction in the number of dinosaur species in latest Cretaceous rock formations compared to slightly earlier periods, and changes in the structure of dinosaur communities that some interpret as signs of ecological stress. However, this interpretation is highly controversial, and other scientists argue that the apparent decline in diversity is an artifact of sampling biases and the incompleteness of the fossil record, and that dinosaur communities in the latest Cretaceous were actually diverse and apparently healthy, with no obvious signs of impending doom. The debate over whether dinosaurs were already declining or were struck down at the peak of their success has important implications for how we understand the extinction event and whether it represents a case of an already struggling group being pushed over the edge or a healthy and successful group being destroyed by a truly catastrophic external event. What is clear is that the terrestrial ecosystems of the Late Cretaceous were complex and productive, with dinosaurs playing crucial roles in the structure and function of these communities. The herbivorous dinosaurs were processing vast quantities of plant material, affecting vegetation structure and nutrient cycling across entire landscapes. The large theropod predators were regulating herbivore populations and driving evolutionary changes in prey species through predation pressure. And the smaller dinosaurs, including many feathered theropods and early birds, were occupying numerous ecological niches at the smaller end of the size spectrum, though they faced increasing competition from an unexpected source. The mammals, which had remained small and relatively insignificant throughout most of the Mesozoic era, were beginning to diversify during the Cretaceous period, and some groups were achieving modest increases in body size and ecological importance. Late Cretaceous mammals included species the size of large dogs or small bears, no longer just tiny insect eaters hiding in the undergrowth, but animals beginning to compete more directly with dinosaurs for food and habitat. The relationship between dinosaurs and mammals during the Cretaceous period is often portrayed as one of dominant dinosaurs oppressing subordinate mammals and preventing their diversification, but the reality was probably more complex. Mammals did remain relatively small throughout the Mesozoic, with the largest species still far smaller than the largest dinosaurs, but they were diverse and apparently successful within the ecological niches they occupied. Some mammals were excellent climbers, exploiting arboreal habitats that dinosaurs could not easily access. Others were burrowers, creating underground refuges where they were safe from predators. And some were nocturnal, active during the hours of darkness when most dinosaurs were presumably resting, thereby temporarily segregating themselves from their reptilian competitors. The question of why mammals did not diversify into larger sizes and more varied ecological roles during the Mesozoic is interesting and has no simple answer, but the most likely explanation is that dinosaurs were simply too successful and too well adapted to terrestrial life to leave many vacant niches that mammals could exploit. Whenever a new ecological opportunity arose, dinosaurs were apparently able to evolve adaptations to exploit it more effectively than mammals could. As the Cretaceous period drew toward its close approximately 66 million years ago, the stage was set for one of the most dramatic and consequential events in the entire history of life on Earth. The dinosaurs had ruled the planet for over 160 million years, far longer than mammals have dominated since their extinction, and had proven themselves remarkably resilient in the face of environmental changes and evolutionary challenges. They had survived numerous smaller extinction events and had bounced back from population crashes and diversity losses multiple times. They had colonized every continent including Antarctica, had adapted to nearly every terrestrial habitat from tropical forests to polar regions, and had evolved into thousands of species filling ecological roles ranging from massive herbivores weighing as much as modern whales to tiny feathered predators no larger than modern sparrows. By any reasonable measure, the dinosaurs were one of the most successful groups of animals ever to evolve, and there was no obvious reason why their dominance should end. Yet end it did, suddenly and catastrophically, in an extinction event so severe that it eliminated not only the dinosaurs but approximately 75% of all species on Earth, fundamentally resetting the course of evolution and clearing the way for the rise of mammals and eventually, many millions of years later, the appearance of humans. The story of the extinction of the dinosaurs is fundamentally a detective story, a mystery that took scientists over a century to solve, and that even today retains some elements of uncertainty and debate. For decades after the first dinosaur fossils were recognized in the early 19th century, the disappearance of these creatures was simply accepted as a fact, without any clear understanding of how or why it had occurred. Various theories were proposed, ranging from the scientific to the absurd, including suggestions that dinosaurs had died from constipation due to the evolution of flowering plants, that mammals had eaten all their eggs, that they had simply grown too large and become too specialized to adapt to changing conditions, or that they had been victims of their own evolutionary success and had essentially evolved themselves into extinction. None of these explanations were satisfactory, and none could account for the apparent simultaneity of dinosaur extinction across the entire world, or for the fact that many other groups of animals had disappeared at the same time, while other groups survived. The breakthrough in understanding the extinction of the dinosaurs came in 1980, when a team of scientists led by physicist Luis Alvarez and his geologist son Walter Alvarez published a revolutionary paper proposing that the extinction had been caused by the impact of a massive asteroid or comet. The Alvarez team had been studying a thin layer of clay found at the boundary between the Cretaceous and Paleogene periods, the geological marker that defined the exact moment of the extinction event, and and they discovered that this clay layer contained extraordinarily high concentrations of iridium, a rare element on Earth's surface but common in asteroids and comets. The iridium anomaly was found in the boundary clay at numerous locations around the world, indicating a global event rather than a local phenomenon, and the amount of iridium present suggested that the impacting object must have been approximately 6 to 9 miles in diameter, large enough to cause catastrophic global devastation. The Alvarez impact hypothesis was initially controversial and faced considerable skepticism from paleontologists, who favoured more gradual explanations for the extinction. But the accumulation of supporting evidence over subsequent decades has convinced the vast majority of scientists that an impact did indeed occur and was the primary cause of the mass extinction. The search for the actual impact crater took more than a decade, but in 1991 scientists identified a massive buried structure near the town of Chicxulub on the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico as the likely impact site. The Chicxulub crater is enormous, approximately 110 miles in diameter, and dating of impact melted rocks from the crater confirms that it formed at exactly the right time to have caused the end Cretaceous extinction event. The energy released by an impact of this magnitude is difficult to comprehend in human terms, but has been estimated as approximately 100 million megatons of TNT, roughly 1 billion times more powerful than the atomic bombs dropped on Japan during World War II, or equivalent to the explosion of all the world's nuclear weapons simultaneously many times over. Such an impact would have had immediate devastating effects on a global scale, followed by longer-term environmental catastrophes that would have made survival extremely difficult for most forms of life. The immediate effects of the Chicxulub impact were apocalyptic for any organisms living within thousands of miles of the impact site. The asteroid struck at a velocity of roughly 12 to 15 miles per second, punching through the atmosphere in less than a second and smashing into the shallow sea that covered the Yucatan Peninsula, instantly vaporizing both the impactor itself and enormous volumes of rock from the impact site. The explosion excavated a crater dozens of miles deep, sending billions of tons of pulverized rock, molten debris, and superheated gases into the atmosphere and beyond, some material even being launched into space before falling back to Earth. An enormous fireball expanded outward from the impact site at supersonic velocities, incinerating everything in its path for hundreds of miles in all directions. Massive earthquakes exceeding magnitude 10 on the Richter scale, far more powerful than any earthquake in recorded human history, shook the entire planet and triggered landslides and ground failures across North America and beyond. Perhaps most devastating were the mega tsunamis generated by the impact, waves that may have been over 1,000 feet high near the impact site, and that remained hundreds of feet high even after travelling thousands of miles across ocean basins. These waves would have swept inland for tens or hundreds of miles along low-lying coastlines, drowning and burying everything in their path under layers of impact debris and marine sediments. Evidence for these tsunamis has been found in geological deposits throughout the Caribbean region and along the Gulf Coast of North America, with sediment layers containing impact debris mixed with marine organisms in areas that are now far from the ocean. The impact also occurred in a particularly unfortunate location from the perspective of long-term environmental effects, as the Yucatan Peninsula is composed largely of limestone and gypsum rocks rich in sulfur. When these rocks were vaporized by the impact, they released enormous quantities of sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, with consequences that would prove even more deadly than the immediate physical destruction. Within hours of the impact, material ejected into the upper atmosphere and beyond began to fall back to Earth across the entire planet, creating a rain of superheated debris that may have raised atmospheric temperatures to oven-like levels and triggered wildfires on a continental or even global scale. Evidence for these wildfires comes from the discovery of soot and charcoal in the boundary clay layer found worldwide, indicating that vast areas of forest and other vegetation were burned in the immediate aftermath of the impact. Some scientists have estimated that as much as half of all terrestrial biomass may have been incinerated during this global fire event, though others argue that wildfires were more regionally variable and that some areas may have escaped the worst of the burning. Animals caught in the open during this period would have been cooked alive by the intense heat, while those sheltering underground or underwater might have had some chance of survival. The sky itself would have glowed red from the enormous quantity of superheated particles entering the atmosphere, creating a scene of Armageddon that would have been visible from anywhere on Earth that still had a clear view of the sky. But even more deadly than these immediate effects were the long-term environmental changes triggered by the impact, changes that would persist for months or years, and that would fundamentally alter the global climate and make survival impossible for most large animals. The enormous quantity of dust, soot, and sulfur compounds thrown into the upper atmosphere created a global shroud that blocked out sunlight and caused what scientists call an impact winter, a period of darkness and cold that may have lasted for several months or even years. Without adequate sunlight, photosynthesis ceased or was greatly reduced, causing the collapse of food chains from the bottom up as plants died and the herbivores that depended on them starved, followed by the predators that fed upon the herbivores. Temperatures plunged globally, possibly by tens of degrees Celsius in some regions, creating freezing or near-freezing conditions even in tropical areas that normally never experience such cold. The combination of darkness, cold, and starvation would have been lethal for most terrestrial ecosystems, particularly for large animals with high food requirements that could not survive extended periods without eating. The months and years following the Chicxulub impact saw the effective destruction of terrestrial ecosystems across the entire planet, as the short-term effects of the impact gave way to longer-term environmental changes that made recovery impossible for many forms of life. The impact winter created by atmospheric debris gradually cleared as particles settled out of the air, but this return of sunlight did not bring immediate relief, because the planet's ecosystems had been so thoroughly disrupted that recovery would take decades at minimum, and more likely centuries or millennia for full ecosystem restoration. The sulfur compounds released by the impact had formed sulfuric acid in the atmosphere, creating acid rain that fell for years, and that further stressed surviving organisms and delayed ecological recovery. The massive injection of carbon dioxide from vaporized limestone rocks eventually led to greenhouse warming as the atmosphere cleared, creating a whiplash effect where the initial impact winter was followed by a prolonged period of elevated temperatures that created additional stress for organisms trying to adapt to the changing conditions. The extinction selectivity, the pattern of which organisms survived and which perished, provides crucial insights into the mechanisms of the extinction event and helps us understand why the dinosaurs specifically were so thoroughly eliminated while some other groups came through relatively intact. Large animals, both herbivores and carnivores, were particularly hard hit because their high food requirements made them vulnerable to the collapse of food chains, and they could not survive extended periods without eating. All dinosaurs larger than about 50 pounds went extinct, with no exceptions anywhere in the world, demonstrating that the environmental stress was severe enough to eliminate even the most successful and well-adapted large animal species. Smaller animals fared somewhat better, particularly those that could burrow underground or shelter in caves, those that could survive on seeds or detritus rather than requiring fresh vegetation, and those with slow metabolisms that could go for extended periods between meals. Many mammals survived the extinction event precisely because they were small, had relatively low metabolic rates compared to dinosaurs, and could subsist on buried seeds, roots, and carrion when fresh food was unavailable. Aquatic and semi-aquatic organisms also showed relatively high survival rates compared to purely terrestrial species, probably because aquatic environments were somewhat buffered against the worst temperature extremes and because aquatic food chains based on detritus and decomposition could persist even when photosynthesis was blocked. Crocodilians and chamsaurs, semi-aquatic reptiles that could feed on dead organic matter and carrion, survived the extinction event with relatively little diversity loss and continue to be important predators in freshwater environments throughout the Paleogene period. Freshwater turtles similarly survived well, as did many fish species, though some groups, including the giant predatory fish that had dominated Cretaceous rivers, did go extinct. Marine ecosystems were severely disrupted by the extinction event, with the complete elimination of several major groups including the ammonites, marine reptiles like plesiosaurs and mosasaurs, and numerous groups of marine invertebrates, but other groups including most fish, sharks, and marine mammals that would later evolve from terrestrial ancestors were able to recover and diversify. The fate of the dinosaurs during this catastrophe varied by size and ecology, but ultimately no large dinosaur species survived anywhere in the world. The giant sauropods, already in decline in many regions by the late Cretaceous, were probably among the first to go because their enormous food requirements meant they would have starved quickly once vegetation became unavailable. The large predatory theropods followed soon after as the herbivore populations they depended upon collapsed. The armored ankylosaurs and mosasaurs, the horned ceratopsians and the duck-billed hadrosaurs all disappeared completely from the fossil record at the extinction boundary, despite having been abundant and diverse right up until that point. Some smaller dinosaurs may have survived for days, weeks, or possibly even months after the impact, eking out an existence on seeds and carrion in the devastated landscape. But ultimately, even these holdouts succumbed to the sustained environmental stress and the complete breakdown of functional ecosystems. The only dinosaurs that successfully passed through the extinction event were certain groups of small flying birds, which by virtue of their small size, high mobility and dietary flexibility, were able to survive conditions that killed all their non-avian relatives. The extinction of the dinosaurs removed the dominant megafauna from terrestrial ecosystems worldwide and created a planet-wide ecological vacuum that would eventually be filled by mammals. But this replacement was not immediate, and the early Paleogene world was a strange and empty place compared to the teeming ecosystems of the late Cretaceous. The earliest Paleogene fossil sites, dating from perhaps a few thousand to a few 100,000 years after the extinction event, show dramatically reduced biodiversity compared to latest Cretaceous sites, with ecosystems dominated by ferns and other pioneer plants, and populated by sparse communities of small surviving mammals, birds, crocodilians, and other hardy organisms. The mammals that survived the extinction were mostly small, generalized forms that had not been particularly important or diverse during the Cretaceous, but they now found themselves in a world largely free of the dinosaurs that had dominated terrestrial habitats for over 160 million years. Evolution rarely wastes opportunity, and these surviving mammals rapidly began to diversify into the vacant ecological niches, evolving larger body sizes and more specialized adaptations as they radiated into herbivorous, carnivorous, and omnivorous forms. The recovery of terrestrial ecosystems from the extinction event was not instantaneous, but rather a prolonged process that took millions of years to fully complete. The earliest Paleogene period, called the Paleocene, saw the gradual restoration of plant communities and the beginning of mammalian diversification. But ecosystems remained relatively simple, and productivity remained lower than Cretaceous levels for several million years. By the Eocene epoch, roughly 56 to 34 million years ago, terrestrial ecosystems had largely recovered and had become as diverse and productive as those of the Cretaceous. But now they were dominated by mammals rather than dinosaurs, with forms ranging from tiny shrews to elephant-sized browsers, and predators that rivaled the great theropods in size and ferocity. Birds also diversified extensively during the Paleogene, radiating into numerous terrestrial and aquatic niches, and and becoming one of the most successful and diverse groups of vertebrates. These birds, being the direct descendants of small theropod dinosaurs, represent the only surviving lineage of the dinosaur family tree and remind us that the dinosaurs did not entirely disappear but rather persisted in modified form as the approximately 10,000 species of modern birds. The ultimate question of whether the Chicxulub impact alone caused the extinction of the dinosaurs, or whether other factors contributed, remains somewhat controversial among scientists. Some paleontologists argue that the impact was the sole cause and that healthy dinosaur populations were struck down suddenly by an unforeseeable cosmic catastrophe. Others maintain that dinosaurs were already under stress from environmental changes, including volcanic eruptions, sea level changes, and climate fluctuations, and that the impact delivered the final blow to groups already in decline. The Deccan Traps volcanic eruptions in India, which occurred over hundreds of thousands of years spanning the extinction event, may have contributed to environmental stress through the release of gases that altered global climate, though whether these eruptions were significant contributors to the extinction or merely coincidentally timed remains debated. The truth likely involves multiple factors, with the impact being the primary cause of the extinction but occurring at a time when ecosystems were possibly already stressed by other environmental changes, making recovery from the impact effects more difficult than it might otherwise have been. The disappearance of the non-avian dinosaurs, 60 BC minus 6 million years ago, marked the end of an era that had lasted for over 160 million years. But it did not mark the end of the dinosaur legacy or the end of their influence on the subsequent history of life on Earth. The existence and eventual extinction of the dinosaurs had profound and lasting effects on the course of evolution, on the structure of modern ecosystems, and on the very fabric of our planet. Understanding this legacy requires us to think not only about what was lost when the dinosaurs died, but also about what their long dominance made possible and what their absence allowed to occur in the worlds that followed. The dinosaurs were not simply a collection of spectacular animals that happened to exist long ago, but rather were key players in a grand evolutionary drama that shaped the conditions under which all subsequent life, including eventually our own species, would evolve and exist. One of the most profound legacies of the dinosaurs is the very existence of birds, the approximately 10,000 species of feathered vertebrates that inhabit nearly every ecosystem on Earth and that represent the only surviving lineage of the dinosaur family tree. Birds are not merely relatives of dinosaurs or descendants of dinosaurs, but are themselves dinosaurs in the most literal and technical sense. Members of the theropod lineage that survived the extinction event and subsequently radiated into the spectacular diversity we see today. Every bird you have ever seen, from the smallest hummingbird to the largest ostrich, from penguins swimming in Antarctic seas to eagles soaring over mountains, is a living dinosaur carrying forward the legacy of the Mesozoic masters. The next time you watch a crow investigating garbage or a robin pulling a worm from your lawn, you are witnessing behaviors that have their roots in the cognitive abilities and hunting strategies of small Cretaceous theropods, and you are seeing the products of an unbroken evolutionary lineage that stretches back over 200 million years to the earliest dinosaurs of the Triassic period. The study of modern birds has provided paleontologists with invaluable insights into the biology and behavior of extinct dinosaurs, because many features of bird anatomy, physiology, and behavior are inherited from their dinosaurian ancestors rather than being novel evolutionary innovations. The complex respiratory system of birds, with air sacs that allow for continuous airflow through the lungs and extremely efficient oxygen extraction, is now known to have been present in at least some non-avian dinosaurs based on evidence from fossil bones, showing the same structural features. The brooding behavior of birds sitting on nests to incubate eggs is also found in some non-avian dinosaurs, with fossils of oviraptorosaurs and troodontids showing adults positioned over nests in exactly the same posture that modern birds use. Even behavioral features like elaborate courtship displays, territorial defense, and complex vocalizations likely have roots extending back into non-avian dinosaurian ancestry, making birds living windows into the behavioral world of the Mesozoic. Another crucial legacy of the dinosaurs was their role in shaping the evolution of mammals during the Mesozoic era, not through any direct intentional action, but simply through their dominance of terrestrial ecosystems that forced mammals into marginal roles and limited their ecological opportunities. This suppression of mammalian diversity may seem like a negative legacy, but it had important long-term consequences that ultimately shaped the mammals that would later inherit the Earth. By occupying most large-bodied terrestrial niches throughout the Mesozoic, dinosaurs forced mammals to remain small and to specialize in nocturnal activity, arboreal lifestyles, burrowing habits, and other ecological strategies that the dominant diurnal terrestrial dinosaurs did not effectively exploit. These adaptations, originally evolved as responses to competition from dinosaurs, became crucial to mammalian survival during the extinction event and provided the foundation for subsequent mammalian success in the Paleogenian world. The nocturnal habits of many early mammals drove the evolution of enhanced hearing and olfaction, the development of whiskers and other tactile sensors, and modifications to vision that emphasized sensitivity over acuity, all of which would later prove valuable in various ways. The small body sizes of Mesozoic mammals may have been a constraint in competition with dinosaurs, but they allowed mammals to survive the extinction event when larger animals could not. The ecological roles that dinosaurs played during their long dominance also had lasting effects on the evolution of plant communities and the structure of terrestrial ecosystems. The presence of enormous herbivores like sauropods created browsing pressures and disturbance regimes that no modern herbivores can replicate, and plants evolved various defenses and life history strategies in response to dinosaurian herbivory. The loss of these mega herbivores at the extinction event removed selective pressures that had shaped plant evolution for over 100 million years, potentially allowing the diversification of plant forms that would have been suppressed or eliminated by dinosaur feeding in earlier times. Some scientists have suggested that the spectacular diversification of flowering plants during the Cretaceous period was at least partially driven by coevolution with herbivorous dinosaurs, particularly the advanced ornithischians whose sophisticated dental batteries allowed them to process tough fibrous vegetation and thereby exert strong selective pressure on plants to evolve chemical defenses, faster growth rates, or other adaptations to cope with intense herbivory. The fossilized remains of dinosaurs themselves represent another form of legacy, quite different from biological or ecological inheritance, but nonetheless significant. Dinosaur fossils have provided humans with direct physical evidence of deep time and evolution, making these abstract concepts tangible and comprehensible in ways that would be difficult or impossible without the fossil record. The discovery and study of dinosaurs has driven the development of paleontology as a scientific discipline, and has contributed to countless advances in geological understanding, evolutionary theory, and biological sciences. The public fascination with dinosaurs has inspired generations of scientists and has maintained broad societal interest in natural history and evolution, helping to communicate scientific concepts to general audiences and to promote science education. Museums featuring dinosaur exhibits are among the most visited cultural institutions worldwide, and dinosaurs appear in countless books, films, and other media, making them arguably the most culturally significant group of extinct organisms and important ambassadors for science and natural history. From a more philosophical perspective, the dinosaurs and their extinction provide humanity with profound lessons about the nature of success, the inevitability of change, and the contingency of existence. The dinosaurs were supremely successful by any reasonable measure, dominating terrestrial ecosystems for a period of time orders of magnitude longer than humans have existed, yet they are gone, eliminated by a cosmic accident that they could neither predict nor prevent. This sobering reality reminds us that evolutionary success does not guarantee permanence, that adaptation to current conditions provides no protection against unpredictable catastrophes, and that the history of life is shaped as much by random chance as by gradual adaptation. Had the asteroid that formed the Chicxulub crater missed the Earth or struck a few million years earlier or later, the dinosaurs might still be the dominant terrestrial vertebrates, and mammals might still be small nocturnal creatures hiding in the undergrowth. The world we know, with its elephants and tigers, whales and bats, and eventually humans with cities and civilizations, exists only because of a cosmic accident that occurred 66 million years ago, a reminder of how contingent and unlikely our own existence really is. Despite over 2 centuries of intensive study and thousands of published research papers, numerous fundamental questions about dinosaurs remain unanswered and continue to drive ongoing research in paleontology and related sciences. These mysteries range from specific details about individual species to broad questions about dinosaur biology, evolution, and extinction that have implications extending far beyond paleontology into evolutionary biology, ecology, and planetary science. Some of these questions may eventually be answered through new fossil discoveries, technological advances, or theoretical insights, while others may remain forever beyond our ability to resolve, given the inherent limitations of the fossil record and the challenges of reconstructing the biology of creatures that have been extinct for millions of years. Understanding what we do not know about dinosaurs is just as important as understanding what we do know, because it reveals the frontiers of scientific investigation and the areas where future discoveries may fundamentally change our understanding. One of the most basic yet stubbornly difficult questions concerns the actual diversity of dinosaurs, the total number of species that existed during the entire Mesozoic era. Current estimates based on described species and statistical models of fossil preservation suggest that somewhere between 1,000 to 10,000 dinosaur species may have existed over the course of the 160 million year reign of these creatures, but the true number could be significantly higher or lower. The problem is that the vast majority of dinosaur species never fossilized, and of those that did fossilize, most have not been discovered and described. We know that the fossil record is biased towards certain environments, like river deltas and coastal plains, where fossilization is more likely, and that upland species living far from water are severely underrepresented. We also know that small species are less likely to fossilize than large ones, that juveniles are less likely to fossilize than adults, and that species from some time periods and some geographic regions are much better represented than others due to quirks of geology and collecting history. All of these biases mean that the known dinosaur fauna represents only a small and non-random sample of the actual diversity that once existed. Questions about dinosaur behavior remain particularly challenging because behavior rarely fossilizes, and most of what we infer about how dinosaurs lived and interacted must be based on indirect evidence and comparison with modern animals. We have trace fossil evidence, including trackways that provide information about locomotion and possible social behavior, and we have rare specimens showing direct interactions between individuals, such as fighting or mating. But these glimpses are frustratingly incomplete. How did dinosaurs communicate with each other? Did they use vocalizations, visual displays, chemical signals, or combinations of these? What sounds did they make, and how would a Cretaceous forest have sounded to a human observer? These questions cannot be fully answered, though scientists continue to make progress through biomechanical modeling of sound-producing structures and studies of closest living relatives. What was the social structure of dinosaur populations? Did they live in stable family groups, temporary aggregations, or loose associations? Did parents care for their young? And if so, for how long? Evidence from nesting sites suggests some species nested colonially and may have guarded nests, but the extent and sophistication of parental care remains uncertain. question of dinosaur intelligence and cognitive abilities, already discussed in an earlier chapter, remains fundamentally difficult because intelligence is hard to define even in living animals and becomes even more challenging when dealing with extinct species. While we can measure brain-to-body size ratios and infer relative intelligence from skeletal evidence, we cannot directly assess problem-solving abilities, learning capacity, or social intelligence without living subjects. Were the smartest dinosaurs comparable to modern birds, or even some mammals in their cognitive abilities, or were they fundamentally more limited? Could they use tools, recognize themselves in mirrors, or plan for future needs? These questions push at the limits of what paleontology can ever hope to answer, yet they are endlessly fascinating because they relate to what it might have been like to be a dinosaur, to experience the world through senses and cognitive processes fundamentally different from our own. The controversy over dinosaur metabolism and thermoregulation, discussed previously, remains incompletely resolved despite decades of research and improved analytical techniques. While the consensus has shifted toward accepting that at least some dinosaurs had elevated metabolic rates compared to typical modern reptiles, the exact nature of dinosaur physiology across different groups and size classes remains debated. New approaches, including analysis of growth rates, bone histology, geographic distributions, and geochemical signatures, are providing additional evidence. But interpreting this evidence requires assumptions and models that themselves remain subject to question. The discovery that some dinosaurs were feathered has supported arguments for endothermy in these species, but the extent to which feathering was widespread across the dinosaur family tree and the degree to which feathers indicate elevated metabolism as opposed to serving purely display functions remains uncertain. Future research may provide clearer answers, or may reveal that dinosaur metabolism was so diverse and complex that no simple characterization accurately describes all groups. Questions about the extinction event itself also remain incompletely resolved, despite the general acceptance of the impact hypothesis. The relative contributions of the Chicxulub impact versus the Deccan Traps volcanism continue to be debated, with some scientists arguing that volcanic effects were significant contributors to environmental stress, while others maintain that the impact was overwhelmingly dominant. The exact kill mechanisms, the specific environmental changes that were most lethal to different groups of organisms, and the timescale over which the extinction unfolded from the moment of impact to the final disappearance of the last dinosaurs remain subjects of active research. Some models suggest that most dinosaurs died within days or weeks of the impact, while others allow for survival of some populations for months or possibly years in refugia, where conditions were less severe. The possibility that some non-avian dinosaurs survived briefly into the Paleogene period in isolated pockets before finally going extinct has been suggested based on controversial fossil finds. Though most paleontologists believe these apparent Paleogene dinosaur fossils are actually Cretaceous fossils that were eroded and redeposited in younger sediments. Another fascinating area of ongoing uncertainty concerns the colours and external appearance of dinosaurs, aspects of their biology that were long considered forever unknowable but that recent discoveries have begun to illuminate. The preservation of melanosomes, microscopic structures that contain pigments, in some exceptionally well-preserved feathered dinosaur fossils, has allowed scientists to reconstruct the colours and patterns of these specimens with reasonable confidence. These studies have revealed that some dinosaurs were quite colourful, with patterns that may have served camouflage or display functions, and that some species showed sexual dimorphism in coloration, as modern birds do. However, this technique works only for melanin-based colours, and only in specimens with exceptional preservation, and the vast majority of dinosaurs cannot be studied this way. The colours of giant dinosaurs like sauropods and large theropods remain speculative, though scientists can make educated guesses based on modern animals of similar size and ecology. The presence or absence of display structures like wattles, inflatable sacs, or coloured skin patches that would not fossilise also remains uncertain. The question of whether non-avian dinosaurs could have survived if the asteroid had missed Earth is both scientifically interesting and philosophically profound. Were the dinosaurs still a vigorous and successful group at the end of the Cretaceous that might have continued to dominate terrestrial ecosystems for millions of years longer? Or were they already in decline and possibly headed toward extinction even without the asteroid impact? And if dinosaurs had continued to dominate, how would this have affected the evolution of mammals, birds, and other groups? Would intelligent tool-using species eventually have evolved from dinosaur lineages, creating a civilization of reptilian rather than mammalian origin? These questions are fundamentally unanswerable because we cannot rerun history, but they highlight how contingent our own existence is on the specific sequence of events that actually occurred. The world we know exists only because of the particular path history took, and had any major event occurred differently, the present would be unrecognizably different. The search for dinosaurs and the study of these ancient creatures continues today with undiminished enthusiasm and constantly improving techniques, as new fossil discoveries, technological advances, and theoretical insights continue to revolutionize our understanding of the Mesozoic world. Modern paleontology is a far cry from the fossil hunting expeditions of the 19th and early 20th centuries, when discoveries were made through patient searching of exposed rocks and careful excavation with simple hand tools, though these traditional methods remain important components of the field. Today's paleontologists have access to technologies that earlier researchers could never have imagined. From CT scanners that can reveal the internal structure of fossils without damaging them, to geochemical analyses that can determine the diets and body temperatures of animals that died millions of years ago, to computer models that can simulate dinosaur locomotion and test hypotheses about behavior and ecology. The pace of discovery has accelerated dramatically in recent decades, with more new dinosaur species being named in the past 20 years than in all previous history, and the flow of new information shows no signs of slowing. China has emerged as perhaps the most important source of new dinosaur discoveries in recent decades, particularly for feathered dinosaurs and early birds that are revolutionizing our understanding of the dinosaur-bird transition. The fossil beds of Liaoning province in northeastern China, dating from the early Cretaceous period approximately 125 million years ago, preserve organisms in extraordinary detail, including soft tissues, feathers, and even stomach contents and last meals. These exquisitely preserved fossils have revealed that many small theropod dinosaurs were covered in feathers of various types, from simple filaments to complex flight feathers, and that feathers evolved long before flight and originally served functions related to insulation and display. Species like Sinosauropteryx, Microraptor, and Anchiornis have provided crucial data about the appearance and evolution of feathered dinosaurs, and have demonstrated beyond any doubt that birds are not merely related to dinosaurs, but are themselves a specialized branch of the dinosaur family tree that survived the extinction event and diversified extensively afterward. New dinosaur discoveries continue to surprise scientists with unexpected forms and combinations of features that challenge existing understanding and force revision of theories about dinosaur evolution and ecology. Recent years have seen the description of dinosaurs with elaborate display structures, including Cosmoceratops with 15 horns on its skull, bizarre predators like Spinosaurus with semi-aquatic adaptations unlike any other large theropod, and enormous herbivores like Patagotitum that push the limits of how large land animals can possibly grow. Each new discovery adds pieces to the puzzle of dinosaur diversity and evolution, sometimes filling in expected gaps in the fossil record, but often revealing completely unexpected forms that expand our appreciation for the evolutionary experimentation that occurred during the Mesozoic era. The discovery of dinosaurs in unexpected places, including species from Antarctica that demonstrate dinosaurs could survive in polar environments, and species from areas that were previously thought to lack dinosaurs, continues to expand our understanding of dinosaur geographic distributions and environmental tolerances. Technological advances are allowing paleontologists to extract information from fossils that would have been impossible to obtain using traditional methods. High-resolution CT scanning can reveal the internal structure of skulls, including brain cavities, inner ear anatomy, and the paths of blood vessels and nerves, all of which provide insights into sensory capabilities, cognitive abilities, and behavior. Synchrotron radiation produced by particle accelerators can reveal microscopic details of bone structure and can detect chemical signatures that provide information about metabolism and growth. Laser-stimulated fluorescence can reveal soft tissue structures in fossils that are invisible under normal light, including skin outlines and possibly even internal organs in some specimens. And sophisticated computer modeling allows scientists to test hypotheses about how dinosaurs moved, how hard they could bite, and how their bodies functioned in ways that would be impossible using fossils alone. Biomechanical modeling has become an increasingly important tool for understanding dinosaur locomotion and behavior, allowing scientists to reconstruct how these animals moved and test hypotheses about their capabilities and limitations. By creating digital models of dinosaur skeletons and using principles of physics and engineering to analyze how forces would have been distributed through bones and joints, researchers can estimate running speeds, turning abilities, and the mechanical limits of dinosaur bodies. These models have revealed that large theropods like Tyrannosaurus rex could probably run at speeds of 15 to 25 miles per hour despite their enormous size, that sauropods use their long tails like whips and could generate supersonic crack sounds for communication or defense, and that some dinosaurs had structural adaptations that would have made certain movements or postures impossible, despite depictions in older books and movies. Finite element analysis, a technique borrowed from engineering, allows researchers to analyze the strength and stress distribution in fossil bones and to understand how different structures would have performed under loading, providing insights into bite forces, neck strength, and the function of defensive structures. The study of dinosaur growth and development has also advanced significantly through the microscopic examination of bone tissue, which reveals patterns of growth similar to tree rings and allows scientists to determine the age at death of individual specimens and to reconstruct growth rates. These studies have shown that dinosaurs grew much more rapidly than modern reptiles, but generally slower than modern mammals and birds, with most species reaching adult size in 10 to 30 years depending on their ultimate body size. Some dinosaurs showed determinate growth where they reached adult size and stopped growing, while others showed indeterminate growth continuing to add size slowly throughout their lives. The fastest growing phase occurred during adolescence, when some large theropods added several pounds of body weight per day, and this rapid growth required enormous food intake and probably elevated metabolic rates. The study of growth series, sequences of specimens of different ages from the same species, has also revealed that many apparent dinosaur species were actually juveniles or subadults of already known species, reducing the total number of valid species and helping scientists understand ontogenetic changes in anatomy. The investigation of dinosaur behavior through the study of trace fossils, evidence of activity rather than body fossils, continues to provide unique insights that cannot be obtained from bones alone. Trackways showing multiple individuals moving together provide evidence for herding behavior and allow scientists to estimate group sizes and assess whether groups were age-segregated or mixed. Nesting sites with eggs, embryos, and juveniles reveal information about reproduction, parental care, and early development. Coprolites, fossilized feces, contain direct evidence of diet, including plant material, bone fragments, and sometimes parasites that infected dinosaurs. Bite marks on bones show predator-prey interactions and can reveal information about hunting strategies and feeding behavior. And in rare cases, fossils preserve direct evidence of interactions between individuals, including fighting dinosaurs, mating pairs, or parents with offspring, providing snapshot views of behavior frozen in stone. Each of these lines of evidence contributes to building a more complete picture of dinosaurs as living animals engaged in the full range of activities necessary for survival and reproduction. The cultural impact of dinosaurs on human society extends far beyond their scientific importance, as these creatures have captured the public imagination in ways that few other scientific subjects have ever achieved. From their first recognition as a distinct group of extinct reptiles in the early 19th century, dinosaurs have fascinated people of all ages and have become deeply embedded in popular culture through books, films, museum exhibits, toys, and countless other media. This cultural phenomenon is somewhat paradoxical, given that no human has ever seen a living dinosaur, and that these creatures have been extinct for over 60 million years, yet they remain more culturally prominent than many living animal groups. The reasons for this enduring fascination are complex, but likely relate to the combination of dinosaurs being simultaneously familiar enough to be comprehensible, yet alien enough to be exciting, being safely extinct yet scientifically real rather than mythological, and representing a lost world of giants that appeals to childlike wonder, while also providing serious scientific insights into evolution, extinction, and deep time. The public understanding of dinosaurs has changed dramatically over the nearly 2 centuries since they were first scientifically described, reflecting both genuine advances in scientific knowledge and changing cultural attitudes and artistic conventions. Early depictions of dinosaurs in the mid-19th century showed them as sluggish, tail-dragging reptilian monsters, more similar to overgrown lizards or crocodiles than to the dynamic, active animals modern science recognizes. The famous Crystal Palace sculptures created in London in 1854 portrayed dinosaurs including Iguanodon and Megalosaurus as ponderous quadrupeds resembling giant iguanas. And while these reconstructions were based on the best scientific knowledge available at the time, they look comically inaccurate to modern eyes. As understanding improved through the late 19th and early 20th centuries, dinosaurs were increasingly reconstructed as more upright and active, though they were still seen as evolutionary dead ends, cold-blooded reptiles that had been replaced by superior mammals. The dinosaur renaissance, beginning in the 1960s and accelerating through subsequent decades, dramatically changed both scientific and popular understanding of these creatures, transforming them from sluggish reptilian monsters into active, dynamic, possibly warm-blooded animals that were successful and sophisticated rather than evolutionary failures. This revolution was sparked by new discoveries including Deinonychus, by new interpretations of existing fossils emphasizing the anatomical similarities between dinosaurs and birds, and by a generation of paleontologists who challenged orthodox views and brought new energy to the field. Popular culture responded enthusiastically to these new ideas, and depictions of dinosaurs in books, films, and documentaries increasingly showed them as fast-moving, intelligent, socially complex animals. The 1993 film Jurassic Park represented a watershed moment in bringing modern scientific understanding of dinosaurs to mass audiences, and despite various scientific inaccuracies and liberties taken for dramatic effect, the film fundamentally changed public perception of what dinosaurs were like as living animals. More recent discoveries of feathered dinosaurs have created the latest revolution in dinosaur imagery, though this change has been more controversial among the general public than previous revisions. The realization that many dinosaurs were covered in feathers rather than scales challenges deeply ingrained visual expectations about what dinosaurs should look like, and some people have resisted accepting feathered reconstructions because they seem to make dinosaurs less impressive or dangerous. However, the evidence for feathering in many dinosaur groups is now overwhelming, and scientifically accurate depictions increasingly show small and medium-sized theropods covered in various types of feathers, while large species may have had more limited feathering or may have lost feathers secondarily as they evolved larger sizes. The question of whether Tyrannosaurus rex had feathers remains contentious, with some scientists arguing for extensive feathering based on the feathering of related species while others point to skin impressions showing scales and argue that such a large animal would have had overheating problems if heavily feathered. The truth may lie somewhere in between, with juvenile T-Rex being feathered for insulation, but adults losing most feathering as they reach sizes where heat retention rather than heat generation became the primary thermoregulatory challenge. The educational value of dinosaurs in communicating scientific concepts to general audiences cannot be overstated, as these creatures provide engaging entry points for discussing evolution, geology, ecology, extinction, and many other important topics. Children in particular are often fascinated by dinosaurs, and this fascination can be channeled into broader interest in science and nature that persists into adulthood. Many professional scientists, including numerous paleontologists, trace their career choices back to childhood interest in dinosaurs sparked by books, museum visits, or films. The presence of spectacular dinosaur exhibits in natural history museums worldwide draws millions of visitors who might not otherwise visit museums or engage with scientific topics. And these visitors are exposed not only to dinosaurs, but to broader messages about evolution, biodiversity, and the scientific method. Dinosaurs serve as ambassadors for science, demonstrating that careful observation, hypothesis testing, and evidence-based reasoning can reveal truths about worlds far removed from everyday human experience. The use of dinosaurs in popular entertainment has sometimes created tension between scientific accuracy and dramatic effectiveness, as filmmakers and authors often take liberties with dinosaur biology and behavior to create more exciting stories. Films frequently depict dinosaurs as more aggressive and dangerous than they probably were in reality, show species together that live millions of years apart or on different continents, and exaggerate sizes and capabilities for dramatic effect. Scientists sometimes lament these inaccuracies and worry that they mislead the public about what dinosaurs were really like. But the entertainment value of dinosaurs in popular culture also maintains public interest and enthusiasm that ultimately benefits science by creating audiences receptive to genuine scientific discoveries and supporting funding for paleontological research. The relationship between science and popular culture regarding dinosaurs is complex and symbiotic, with each influencing the other in ways that have shaped both scientific research priorities and public understanding. The economic impact of dinosaurs through tourism, merchandise, media, and educational materials is substantial, though difficult to quantify precisely. Natural history museums featuring dinosaur exhibits are major tourist attractions that generate significant revenue and economic activity in their cities. Theme parks and attractions based on dinosaurs draw millions of visitors annually. The market for dinosaur-related toys, books, clothing, and other merchandise is enormous and global, and films and television programs featuring dinosaurs have generated billions of dollars in revenue. This economic dimension of dinosaurs, while perhaps less intellectually satisfying than scientific or educational aspects, nonetheless represents a significant phenomenon and demonstrates the deep cultural penetration these ancient creatures have achieved. The fact that extinct reptiles that disappeared 66 million years ago can generate substantial economic activity in the modern world is remarkable, and speaks to the powerful hold these creatures have on human imagination. The extinction of the dinosaurs offers profound lessons about the fragility of life, the inevitability of change, and the unpredictable nature of catastrophe that remain deeply relevant to modern concerns about environmental change and the future of life on Earth. The dinosaurs were supremely successful by any evolutionary measure, having dominated terrestrial ecosystems for over 160 million years, and having proven themselves capable of adapting to numerous environmental changes, including significant fluctuations in climate, sea level, and atmospheric composition. They survived several smaller extinction events and bounced back from population crashes that reduced their diversity. They evolved sophisticated adaptations for survival, including intelligence, social behavior, complex parental care, and physiological innovations that made them highly effective competitors. Yet despite all of this success and adaptation, they were eliminated almost entirely by an event that was literally cosmic chance, an asteroid impact that could not have been predicted or prevented, and that fundamentally reset the evolutionary trajectory of life on Earth. This story of sudden catastrophic extinction challenges the common assumption that evolution inevitably leads toward increasing fitness and that successful adaptation provides security against extinction. The dinosaurs were magnificently adapted to the world in which they lived, but that world was destroyed in a geological instant by external forces against which adaptation provided no defense. The lesson is humbling and sobering, suggesting that no group of organisms, regardless of how successful or well adapted they may be, is immune to extinction if environmental conditions change rapidly enough or drastically enough. This realization has important implications for thinking about modern biodiversity and conservation, as it reminds us that even common and widespread species can be driven to extinction by sufficiently severe environmental disruption, and that apparent security and stability can be illusory when viewed on geological timescales. The dinosaurs seemed invincible at the peak of their dominance, yet they vanished, and this serves as a cautionary tale about complacency and the assumption of permanence. The current biodiversity crisis, often called the sixth mass extinction, invites inevitable comparisons with the extinction event that killed the dinosaurs, though there are important differences as well as similarities. The current wave of extinctions is being driven primarily by human activities including habitat destruction, pollution, climate change, overhunting, and the introduction of invasive species, rather than by a sudden cosmic impact. The pace of modern extinction is rapid by historical standards, but still much slower than the catastrophic die-off that occurred 66 million years ago, unfolding over decades to centuries, rather than days to years. And crucially, the current extinctions are potentially preventable through human action, whereas the dinosaurs had no ability to predict or prevent the asteroid impact that doomed them. However, the end result may ultimately be similar in scale if current trends continue, with projections suggesting that a significant fraction of current biodiversity could be lost over the coming centuries, fundamentally altering ecosystems and reducing the evolutionary potential of life on Earth. The dinosaur extinction also provides insights into the process of recovery from mass extinction events, and the timescales required for ecosystems to rebuild their complexity and diversity after catastrophic disruption. The fossil record shows that recovery from the end Cretaceous extinction took several million years at minimum, with initial recolonization by pioneer species being followed by gradual diversification and increasing ecological complexity as new groups evolved to fill vacant niches. The mammals that inherited the Earth after the dinosaurs did not immediately diversify into all possible niches, but rather underwent stepwise radiation over millions of years, with different groups evolving adaptations for different lifestyles and ecosystems at different times. This pattern suggests that recovery from severe extinction events is not rapid even on geological timescales, and that the loss of biodiversity caused by mass extinctions has consequences that persist for millions of years. The relevance to modern conservation is clear, as it suggests that biodiversity lost to current extinction processes cannot be quickly restored, and that the evolutionary consequences of current actions will persist far into the future regardless of later conservation efforts. Some scientists have argued that the extinction of the dinosaurs, while catastrophic for those creatures, was ultimately beneficial for mammals and eventually for humans by removing the dominant competitors and allowing mammals to diversify into roles they could not occupy while dinosaurs lived. This perspective suggests that mass extinctions, despite their immediate devastation, may sometimes serve as evolutionary reset buttons that clear away established groups and allow new evolutionary experimentation and innovation. Without the asteroid impact, mammals might have remained small and nocturnal indefinitely, and intelligent tool-using species like humans would never have evolved, because dinosaurs or their descendants would have continued to occupy the large terrestrial animal niches. From this viewpoint, the extinction of the dinosaurs was a prerequisite for human existence, and we literally owe our existence to that catastrophic event. However, this argument should not be taken as justification for current extinctions or as suggesting that mass extinctions are positive events, but rather as recognition that evolution is opportunistic and that the consequences of catastrophic events can include both destruction and creation. Loss and innovation. The study of the dinosaur extinction has also contributed to broader understanding of how Earth's systems respond to catastrophic disruptions, and how the interconnections between atmosphere, oceans, climate and life can create cascading effects that amplify initial disturbances. The impact winter scenario, where atmospheric debris blocked sunlight and collapsed photosynthesis globally, illustrates how disruption to one part of the Earth system can propagate through the entire system and create effects far more severe than the initial disturbance alone would suggest. This understanding has applications to modern concerns, including nuclear winter scenarios, volcanic eruptions, and rapid climate change, all of which involve perturbations to Earth systems that could cascade into broader disruptions. The dinosaur extinction serves as a natural experiment demonstrating how interconnected Earth systems are and how vulnerable complex ecosystems can be to rapid environmental change that exceeds the ability of organisms to adapt. Questions about whether the dinosaur extinction could have been survived by technological intelligence had such intelligence existed among dinosaurs raise interesting philosophical issues about the relationship between intelligence and survival in the face of catastrophic environmental change. A technological civilization with the capability to predict asteroid impacts and potentially deflect them might have saved the dinosaurs from extinction, and this realization has motivated serious scientific discussions about planetary defense and the detection and deflection of potentially hazardous asteroids. Humans, unlike the dinosaurs, have at least the potential capability to prevent extinction from asteroid impacts, though actually implementing effective planetary defense systems remains technologically and politically challenging. However, technology does not provide protection against all possible extinction scenarios, and some catastrophic events, including nearby supernova explosions or gamma-ray bursts, might be impossible to defend against using any conceivable technology. The lesson is that intelligence and technology provide some protection against some threats, but do not eliminate existential risks entirely, and that long-term survival requires both technological capability and wisdom in how that capability is applied. As we reach the end of our journey through the age of dinosaurs, we must confront the question posed in the title of this documentary. Why did Earth erase its first masters, and what does this great forgetting mean for our understanding of life, time, and existence? The term forgetting is perhaps misleading, because Earth itself does not remember or forget, being merely a planet following physical laws without consciousness or intention. Yet there is something poignant about the completeness with which the dinosaurs vanished, and the finality with which an entire era of Earth's history came to an end. For over 160 million years, dinosaurs shaped every terrestrial ecosystem, filled every available ecological niche, and created a world in their own image where they were the undisputed masters of the land. Then, in a moment of cosmic violence lasting mere hours or days, they were gone. Erased so completely that only their bones remain buried in stone, a silent testimony to a lost world. The erasure of the dinosaurs was so thorough that the very landscapes they inhabited have been fundamentally transformed by the subsequent 66 million years of geological processes. The forests they walked through have turned to coal or have eroded away entirely. The rivers they drank from have changed course thousands of times or have vanished. The mountains they sheltered beneath have been worn down to plains, while new mountains have risen elsewhere, and even the positions of the continents have shifted, such that the world they knew is unrecognizable in its modern configuration. The air they breathed had different oxygen levels and different compositions. The climate they lived in was warmer and more stable than modern climates. And even the length of the day was slightly shorter due to the gradual slowing of Earth's rotation over geological time. In every possible way, the world of the dinosaurs is gone, erased not only by the extinction event, but by the relentless march of geological time that eventually obliterates all traces of the past. Yet the forgetting is not quite complete, because we have discovered their bones and have learned to read the stories written in stone. Through the patient work of generations of paleontologists and the application of increasingly sophisticated scientific techniques, we have recovered fragments of the lost world and have reconstructed at least partial images of what the age of dinosaurs was like. Every fossil discovered adds another piece to this vast puzzle. Every new technology reveals details previously hidden, and every generation of scientists builds upon the work of those who came before to create an increasingly detailed picture of these vanished creatures and the world they inhabited. The great forgetting is being reversed, slowly and incompletely, as the dinosaurs return to our knowledge, if not to life itself, taking their place in human consciousness as symbols of both the grandeur of life and the inevitability of extinction. The significance of the dinosaurs extends beyond their inherent fascination as spectacular creatures from a lost world, touching on fundamental questions about the nature of life, the processes of evolution, and the place of humanity in the history of the Earth. The dinosaurs demonstrate that evolution can produce remarkable diversity and adaptation, that life can exist in forms almost unimaginably different from our own familiar mammals and birds, and that success in evolutionary terms does not guarantee permanence or provide protection against catastrophic change. They show us that the history of life is not a steady progression toward greater complexity or superiority, but rather a branching tree of possibilities shaped by both adaptation and chance, with many branches being pruned by extinction while others survive to give rise to new radiations. The dinosaurs are a humbling reminder that humans, despite our intelligence and technology, are merely the latest in a long succession of dominant groups, and that our tenure as masters of Earth is likely to be temporary, just as the dinosaurs' reign eventually ended. The story of the dinosaurs also illustrates the power of science to reveal truths about worlds far removed from human experience. Using indirect evidence and careful reasoning to reconstruct events that occurred millions of years before any human existed, the fact that we can know anything at all about dinosaurs is remarkable, given that they left behind only fragmentary fossilized remains and occasional traces of their activities. Yet from these sparse clues, scientists have built detailed and increasingly accurate reconstructions of dinosaur anatomy, behavior, and ecology. This achievement demonstrates both the power of the scientific method when properly applied and the creativity and insight required to interpret ambiguous evidence and construct coherent narratives about the past. The study of dinosaurs represents human curiosity and intellect at their best, driven by the desire to understand rather than by immediate practical application, pursuing knowledge for its own sake because the story of life on Earth is worth knowing. As we consider the legacy of the dinosaurs and the meaning of their extinction, we are ultimately brought back to questions about our own existence and our own future. The dinosaurs ruled for 160 million years before being erased by cosmic accident, while humans have existed in our modern form for only about 300,000 years, a mere blink of an eye in geological terms. We have achieved remarkable things in that short time, developing language, culture, technology, and civilization, but we have also become the first species capable of causing our own extinction through warfare, environmental destruction, or mismanagement of powerful technologies. The asteroid that killed the dinosaurs was an external threat that they could neither predict nor prevent, but the threats that humans face are largely of our own making, and are therefore potentially within our power to prevent if we choose to do so. The question is whether we will show the wisdom and foresight necessary to ensure our long-term survival, or whether we will join the dinosaurs as a cautionary tale about the fragility of dominance and the consequences of failing to adapt to changing circumstances. The great forgetting of the dinosaurs reminds us that nothing lasts forever, that all species eventually go extinct, and that even the most successful and dominant groups are temporary inhabitants of an ever-changing planet. This knowledge could lead to nihilism and despair, but it can also lead to appreciation for the preciousness and improbability of life, and to determination to preserve and protect the remarkable biodiversity that currently exists. The dinosaurs cannot be brought back, their world cannot be restored, and the extinction event that killed them cannot be undone. But we can ensure that their memory is preserved and that the lessons of their existence and extinction inform our understanding of life and our actions toward the future. In studying the dinosaurs, we study ourselves, our origins, our evolutionary heritage, and our possible fates. And in remembering them, we honor not only these magnificent creatures, but also the processes of life and evolution that continue to shape the living world. As you drift towards sleep, let your mind wander one final time across those ancient landscapes where giants walked and the air echoed with calls that no human will ever hear. The dinosaurs are gone, vanished into the depths of time, erased by an accident of cosmic timing that reset the course of evolution and made possible the world we know today. They left behind only bones buried in stone, fragmentary traces of lives lived millions of years ago, silent witnesses to a grandeur that once was and never will be again. Yet in those bones lies a message that transcends the vast gulf of time separating their world from ours. A message about the creativity of evolution, the beauty of adaptation, the inevitability of change, and the humbling truth that all dominance is temporary and all power is conditional upon circumstances beyond any single species' control. The great forgetting that erased the dinosaurs from the living earth was not a judgment or a punishment, not the result of evolutionary failure or inadequacy, but simply the consequence of being in the wrong place at the wrong time when a mountain-sized rock fell from the sky and changed everything in an instant. The dinosaurs were magnificent creatures, supremely adapted to the world they inhabited, but they could not adapt to the world being destroyed around them, could not survive the darkness and cold that followed the impact, could not outlast the starvation that resulted from the collapse of ecosystems from the bottom up. Their reign of 160 million years ended in a geological eye blink, and the world that emerged from the catastrophe was fundamentally different, emptier and quieter, waiting to be filled by new creatures with new forms and new possibilities. The mammals that inherited the